A man sees emptiness, thinking that he is dead. Having no talent or even any skill, he had been living the last 15 years, working hard to have something to eat. And all this in order to be killed by a truck at the age of 30. Someone is calling Mr. Dzink. Opening his eyes, the man wonders who it is. He sees a girl who calls him by that name, mentally denying it because his name is different. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. She is happy that Mr. Jink has finally woken up. She reported that the boy suddenly fell right in front of His Royal Majesty. She's crying because she was so worried. Her heart just breaks. His Royal Majesty dismissed the convoy and ordered Mr. Dzink to be deported from the country. The man asked the girl not to rush things. The whole story about Dzink had confused him. First, he wants the girl to tell him who he is and where he is. She was stunned by these words and said she would call a doctor right away. His name is Jinka Nonland. He is the 14-year-old heir of Duke Nonland. Since childhood, he has been in a convoy, which in fact was just escorting His Royal Majesty to the Kingdom of Rosalt. His Majesty said that the boy should not appear in front of his eyes, because the House of Nonland is a family that has been called elite spearmen for generations. Jink was bad at Sujutsu and started behaving badly because of it. No wonder His Majesty disliked the guy. In any case, the man was reborn into a boy. He doesn't know why, but he remembered the whole life lived by Jinkuro. Now he has all his memories in his head. The man remembers that he had read similar books. He became convinced that rebirth in another world really exists. All these memories are in my head now. The maid is surprised that the boy has fallen and Mr. Jink is behaving well today. The personality of Jinkuro is still overwhelming. Suddenly, the thought of deportation shot through him like an arrow. He turned to a girl named Elsa to ask about His Majesty's decision. The girl said that after His Royal Majesty dismissed the convoy, the boy was ordered to leave the kingdom. It was decided that Esther would become the heir. The young man was also stripped of his aristocratic status. His Royal Majesty ordered Jink to leave the kingdom within a month. She cries, saying that she is very sorry. At this moment, the young man was very lost in thought. Old Jink knew he was going to be deported. If you go outside the capital, you may come across monsters. This is considered equivalent to a death sentence. Although the man was reborn, nothing has changed. He realizes that his life is just as worthless. Turning to the maid, the young man says that he needs to get dressed and was surprised. A sobbing Elsa said she would help him. He saw a table with statistics next to her, as if from a game. The young man was very surprised by this, so much so that he was covered with beads of sweat. The young man asked what it was. The girl thought she had something on her face, but the boy said it was his imagination. It turned out that only he could see it. Turning away from the babysitter, the boy rubbed his eyes harder, thinking that he had imagined what he had seen. Elsa stopped crying. The boy's behavior seemed strange to her. He sees it perfectly. Elsa the maid. There are no skills, but the skills are washing dishes, washing, cooking, and caring for children. The man knows about it. It's rare in this world. He is the owner of the demonic eye. Waving his hand, the boy tried to highlight his characteristics. He's trying to focus so he can see better. The young man will use this ability very often. He needs it. You don't even have to strain yourself in games. He's been around since the beginning of the 9th level. First level Sujutsu. Everything is evaluated according to ABC categories. Skills, Sujutsu, physical strength, appreciation, courtesy. One of the bonuses is storage. There's a whole list of skills. Fencing S, Sujutsu, F, cane handling, F, physical strength and martial arts, A, fire and air magic, B, water magic, S, air magic, A, alchemy, A, healing, S. Evaluation is the ability to see statistics. Also enchantment S. The boy screams that this can't be happening. He knows that there are only 3 people in the world who have this ability. Elsa does not understand what is happening to him and tries to understand. He apologized to her, saying that he had forgotten about her. There will be 4 people with him. Thanks to this ability, the young man will be able to strengthen objects. Esther's younger brother entered the room and came to help, bringing some money and a spear. Esther is one of the few people in this house who understands Dzink. The young man thanked his brother, although he was unlikely to use a spear. Jink asked me to buy something. The merchants in the city won't want to deal with him now that he's lost his title as an aristocrat. Dink wants Esther to use the money to buy everything he needs. A little later, he promised to give his brother a list. The next day, the younger brother collected all the things from the list. The reborn man looks at the large number of servants with surprise. Esther thought it would be hard for his older brother to carry everything alone, but Jink said he would tell the secret when all the things were brought. Waving his hand, he tells Esther that he will leave this country. No one will be with him because his father sent him away. Jink demonstrates his storage ability. He asks me not to tell anyone, even though he just found out about it. Esther is thrilled about it. He wants to see what's inside. Jink allowed it but asked to be careful. The storage is very spacious. Looking at his brother's stats, he noticed that he also has this ability but doesn't know about it. Esther doesn't have the ability to evaluate. Jink asked his brother to give him a small bottle of his blood. This is necessary to conclude a contract. Esther agreed because his brother wants him to. The young man asked the boy to show him where the Adventurers Guild was in order to register. The younger brother does whatever he asks. Walking down the street, Esther asks not to listen to the gossip around her, but Jin doesn't care. He understands everything, but he doesn't like it. There's nothing you can do about it. The consequences of the incompetent aristocrat's actions are clearly visible. The real Jink had a lot of power and treated the commoners badly. But Nanny Elsa has been taking care of him since childhood. She can be understood. The man wonders why Esther will miss such a brother. Even if you remember his whole life, a man will not be able to understand this. They arrived at the Adventurers Guild. The employee asks to drop some blood on the guild card, and then the young man will become a G-rank adventurer. In conclusion, she suggests that he listen to a brief description of the guild. Jink agreed, but thinks that there is a lot of red tape here. The employee, terrifyingly fast, says that an adventurer can get ranks from S to SS. Initially, they receive the rank of G. If you don't participate in guild life for about a month, the adventurer will receive fewer points. Evening came, the young man wants to stretch. He's going to practice with a sword until dinner. If you look at the statistics, fencing is more highly rated than Sujutsu. Dink says that if he could have known his stats, his life would have turned out differently. With one swing of his sword, he cuts the scarecrow in half. A reborn man is delighted with the body of a 14-year-old boy. He suddenly thought about a parting gift for Esther. He has the skill of alchemy and enchantment. After dinner, he decided to study magic. For Esther's sake, the young man wants to do his best. The dining room of the Nonland mansion. The head of the family, Gordon Nonland, addresses his son, reminding him that this is his last dinner here and the boy will leave in the morning. My father started talking about fencing, but hushed it up. The young man decided to go to his room to prepare for the morning. Dink checks the characteristics of the equipment. They must match his level. His enchantment is currently at the 3rd level. If he wears this equipment, his physical strength will not be 25 points, but 52. The boy is wondering how effective this will be. He said it would be fun tomorrow, but suddenly he ran out of energy. He abruptly opened a mana potion to replenish his energy. This ability is useful, but it's exhausting. There was only a gift left for Esther. The young man is thinking about what to give his brother. He has already sold all the household goods. He looks at the spear his grandfather gave him. It's from Mithril. The spear was exchanged for a gold bar and the hilt was made from additional funds. The western gate of the royal capital of Ruth. Esther tells her brother that he will have to go on alone. Holding out the card and the box, Jink says that with this gift he wants to thank for all his help. He asks Esther to drop blood on the card later and to open the box when Dink is out of the country. He asked his younger brother to do as he said. Jink turned towards the exit and waved his hand. Nanny Elsa and Esther started crying. They ask him to be careful. This is his true beginning. First, he needs to go to the border. 2 days walk to the postal city of Rio. He needs to go through the Birch area and then through the Mobbit's brand. It will take him 4 days. Normally, the young man would have to spend the night somewhere on the way to Rio. But now it's too dangerous to be alone. Bending down, he wondered how far he could go with the physical strength enchantment. Taking a step forward, the young man was surprised by the speed. It's better than he expected. He believes that he will reach his destination by the end of the current day. An hour later, Jink stopped. Even though he was running non-stop, he wasn't even tired. It's all thanks to the magic skill. A brutal picture of slaughtered animals and people unfolded in front of him. The sight made him feel sick. Goblins jumped on him from behind, which most likely got rid of the unfortunate people. He defends himself deftly from monsters. Their physical strength is level 8. If the young man hadn't been careful, he would have lost. His body starts moving before he even has time to think about it. It's all thanks to magic. Sitting under a tree, a young man is resting. He dealt with the entire crowd of goblins. It's good that he took a smart approach to raising the level. He was deported from a fallen country. The young man considers this a good event. He will reach his goal thanks to these abilities. Jink can smell the blood of humans and monsters. That's the order of the day in this world. With his hand on his heart, he tells them to rest in peace. In this world, looting after being attacked by a monster is not a crime. Even if you don't touch them, other monsters will come and take their things for themselves. If you bring a family heirloom from a corpse to the guild, you can receive a reward, as well as gratitude from the family of the deceased. Jink wants to get out of this country as soon as possible. He also needs to get used to butchering monsters. The one who laughs is the one who won't be butchered in the end. To prove that the goblin was killed, you need to pull the magic stone out of the ear and heart. This can be used to earn money in the guild. Getting to know all the monsters is scary. And while traveling to the postal city of Rio, you can meet goblins and kobolds, but Jinka has no problems with this. The next morning, the young man looks at his stats. His level has increased. He can't upgrade a weapon again if he's already done it once. That's why the young man took a lot of spare things. He used magic and upgraded the level of the sword to level 8. 8 points have been added to the swordsmanship ability. I kept the old sword in reserve. 1 hour later, the forest is to the east of the Mobbit's brand. Travelers are resting in the clearing. He won't be able to get into the city in time, so he'll have to spend the night in this place. When he was drinking a mana potion, someone was screaming for help. These were the guys who begged for a potion for their dying friend. He promises to pay, but a guy from another squad says the potion is too expensive. The young man listens to this in silence. Jink approached the guy and said he could give him a potion. According to the statistics, they are not bad people, and the young man doesn't want to watch someone die. He gave them a potion. Since Jink wasn't that badly injured, he didn't try it. That's why he doesn't know if it will help. The injured guy suddenly sat up and his friend, who was so worried about him, rushed into his arms. Approaching the young man, he thanks him for his help. The guy is a leader named Alexander, abbreviated as Alec. Their C-rank team, which calls Tears of the Dragon. Alec holds out a bag of money, saying that this is all they have. He wants to pay for the potion. The young man asks first to tell them what happened to them. The squad was unlucky to encounter an A-rank red ogre. Sitting on his knees, Alec says that Dink is the savior. He'll pay him back even if he doesn't have anything. He is ready to become a servant to a young man. The price of 1 bottle of the potion is 5 gold coins. In terms of Japanese yen, that would be 5 million. In this world, servantry is allowed and Jink even understands why. But having an old man as a servant is somehow too much. When the young man told the guy to get up, everyone heard the cry of a whole crowd of ogres who smelled the man's blood. The monsters are D-rank and the physical strength is at the 29th level. Although there are many of them, this is not a problem for D-Zink. Some guy says they ran out of good weapons because of the red ogre. The young man didn't want anyone to see it until he left the country. After opening the vault, he gives everyone the good swords he took with him on the road. The squad is shocked but does not refuse. Jink gets rid of monster after monster. People understand that the orcs are D-rank, but the boy defeats them so easily. They're joining the battle too. The young man thinks that he needs to kill as many monsters as possible to get more experience points. He's not going to give in to other adventurers. The orc general joined the fray. He's a B-rank, canes are 40, and physical strength is 68. While the guys are fighting the horde, Jink is going to attack the orc general alone. Alec calls out to him. Trying to inflict at least some heavy damage, the boy is pushed away by the monster. Magic doesn't help. Jink began to believe that he had been too quick to fight the bully alone. The red orc is stabbed in the back by Alec, who tries to distract him. It was a decisive maneuver. The boy jumped on the creature's back and plunged his sword into the head to get rid of the monster. After cutting off the general's head, the rest of the orcs began to retreat. Alec says that Jink is incredible and believes that he is of high rank. Jink said he was a G-rank rookie. He was able to defeat the bully thanks to the leader. Alexander asks to keep the award for himself, but the young man offered to share it. The people around him heard the boy's name. The rumors have already reached here. Everyone realized that the young man had been deported from the Nonland royal family. He admits to everyone that he is a fallen member of the Nonland family. Even though he says so, the young man is no longer an aristocrat. There are people talking behind him, saying that the guy himself is different from the rumors. They say that the young man was Dora's terrible son. Jink asked Alec about the plans. They were going to the royal capital after completing the escort mission, but before that they would stop by Mobbitsburg. Bowing before the boy, Alec says that now he is a servant to Jinka and will follow him anywhere. The young man asks not to solve it so easily. The leader shouts that he cannot thank him otherwise. D-Zink says that he also planned to go to Mobbitsburg and asked for permission to join their squad. The young man wants to ask them to give something to Esther Nonland. Then their servantry contract will end. In this way, he will learn how to be a traveler. Alexander, surprised by D-Zink's order, rushed to hug him. Alec bursts into tears, calling D-Zink a good guy. He shouts that the leader stinks of sweat. He released the unfortunate boy who almost suffocated and is delighted. Someone is watching them. A man, a guy, and an elf archer. The girl says that the boy is quite interesting, but the men are silent. They encountered an orc on the way, and they were forced to get rid of it. Now they are moving towards the distant town of Mobbitsburg. This is the Goblin Forest. Despite the name, there are no orcs here. In the end, there was nothing special about this forest. Arrows flew into the ground in front of the squad. Goblins towered over them, ready to shoot them with a bow. Jink ordered them to be slaughtered so that they could break through further. The young man rushed straight into the horde of goblins. The squad joined his attack. Jink thought they were wasting their energy. Perhaps they do it for the sake of experience points and money. After dealing with the monsters, the whole squad is sitting on the ground, pretty tired. The boy feels great. They're shocked at how he's doing it. He looks weaker than the squad. The young man throws everything off on talent. He boosts his physical strength with magic because it's his ability. The three who had been watching from the side came up to them. The girl's name is Karen, and she's the leader of their Sacred Flame team. Next to her is a boggart who is amazed by the boy's talent. Jink saw that the third guy also had magic. They met by introducing themselves and shaking hands. Their team consists of guys with A ranks. Will has an appreciation for weapons. He noticed that the young man's equipment had gained 8 points in physical strength. The guy noticed that Jink was also a magician. The people around heard that Nonland's son was a magician. They are shocked because they have heard that they are not on the continent. Will asked the boy if he wanted to sell this ability for a reasonable price. Dzink has a condition for this. To begin with, the skill owner must drip blood on the enchanted item, but he must do everything right. The object should not be desecrated by the hands of people with a dubious past. Also, Jink is currently heading to the Kingdom of Coal via Mobitsburg. And until he leaves this country, he will not give this ability to anyone. The guide tells him that he needs to drink for this condition. Besides, he is an adventurer from the stake. They are happy to see a magician in their country. As for the price, the boy does not know what it should be because he has never met other magicians. He asks Will to name his amount. Jink told me that he can use magic on fencing, sajutsu, physical strength on friendly. There's also alchemy, appraisal, and a small storage facility. Will is stunned and pulls the boy by the shoulders, hearing that he has such rare skills. The young man finds the guy annoying. Out of kindness, Jink used his magic and improved the items of the A-ranked guys. He wants to give everyone a card with a score of 3. Out of impotence, the young man drinks a mana potion. It turned out that he was already drinking his 5th bottle. Magic takes a lot of mana. They put blood on the card and everything worked. The card can only be used for skills. If Jink tells them about their additional qualities, Will give him an additional reward. Unlike skills, qualities are indefinable, so the boy didn't mention it. Some people have undeveloped qualities and talents. But if he gets paid, the young man will be happy to tell. He doesn't want to just help someone he doesn't understand. He was provided with a bag of gold coins and bullion. Many people envy the boy after that. It seems strange to Will that Jink is a magician, and besides, a very important person who travels alone. After that, the Sacred Flame Squad found out that he had been deported. Karen screams that the young man does not look like a criminal. Alex stood up for his man, telling them not to touch him. Dink said that he had behaved inappropriately. He was falsely accused. He did not tell his family about these abilities. If they found out about it, they would have started exploiting it. He has a small circle of people whom the young man can trust. Therefore, Jink decided to go to the Kingdom of Kal. The Sacred Flame Squad will help you cross the border. They decided to hurry because Mobitsburg was only a short distance away. A crowd of people headed into the city. The adventurers have arrived in the Kingdom of Colt, the remote town of Mobitsburg. Nobody knows the boy. The money he got through magic will be spent on purchases. The seller is shocked that the young man is ready to buy everything. Jink acquired forging materials and potions. He asks for the best weapons and armor. The man calls the young man an ardent buyer. He chose spears from the weapons and asked for a slightly smaller armor. The armor is made of red dragon skin and the spear is simple and durable. He was offered help with packing the goods, but the boy refused. He has the storage ability. It will be a gift for Esther. It won't last long, so he uses magic to strengthen the equipment as much as he can. The next morning, a suburb of Mobitsburg, Jink doesn't look good, which his new friends noticed. He drank a bunch of potions and didn't sleep most of the night. Dink remembered about the quality assessment cards. He did this for Alec as well, in gratitude for his help with sending the gift. At the moment, magic is already at the 12th level. The Sacred Flame Squad and the young man went to the border. Same day, the Nonland mansion. The subordinate asks the master if he is too strict. His Royal Majesty replies that Esther will become the heir to the House of Nonland. The father wants his son to understand this and forget Jinka. Jink's younger brother is sitting alone in the room. Concrete walls and floor. Right now, he's only thinking about his older brother. Esther fell to the floor. His father asks him if his son was working while he was away. His Majesty is furious and hopes that Esther won't do that anymore. He hits the boy so that he coughs. His father is punishing him. When Jink leaves the house, Esther will not be allowed to go outside for 50 days. He gave him a potion. The father told his subordinate to accompany his son and reminded Esther that Dink was no longer his brother. The boy is alone in a locked room and stroking a bird. He thinks about Jinka, thinking that he is wandering alone in the forest. Suddenly, he puts aside his thoughts and tells himself that he believes in his older brother. Jink will be able to leave this country alive. At this time, the Sacred Flame Squad along with Jink are fighting monsters. The young man is trying for his brother's sake. They destroy creature after creature. Orcs and goblins are defeated with incredible speed. Karen fights with a bow and Will fights with air magic. The young man is amazed at their abilities. Will said that, thanks to magic, he himself would soon raise his rank. Initially, the guy improved his fire magic, although he doesn't even know how to create a forest fire. Jink thought about how to improve his magic abilities. The closer to the borders, the more monsters there are. It turns out that if a person is a merchant or an adventurer with a low rank, then you cannot reach the border. Karen says it's unlikely that a C-rank adventurer will get to such places. Merchants who want to cross the border hire a B-rank or higher escort. There is a wyvern deep in the forest. Sometimes a dragon appears next to the road. The employer may even ask to catch her. Jink wouldn't want to meet wyvern right now. The squad says that you shouldn't worry about it because the border is already close. The guys arrived at the border town of Colt. It is said that no one survived after crossing the border. Will wonders if they'll have any problems. Karen asks you not to worry about anything. They agree to help the boy. Bogart reminds them that they are a rank and Karen is S-rank and she is of noble blood. Will says there are viscounts serving in the local country, so it's okay. Jink hopes that he won't have to use physical force and that everything will turn out without incident. The viscount shouted that he was conducting an inspection of the commoners and asked for identification. Taking the boy's ID, the fighter was very surprised. The young man said that he had lost his status and became a commoner. He's the same Jinka Nonland. The viscount's squad was blown up. They had heard that Nonland's son had left the royal capital 5 days ago. He arrived suspiciously quickly at the border. Karen approached the viscount and explained that they had come by boat. This child was told to leave, which he did. The fighter angrily shouts at the girl that a commoner dares to talk to a knight like that. She showed her ID card, which says that she is an S-rank adventurer. With a fierce look, she orders the knight to watch his words and asks that it is not customary to be rude in this place. Jink tries to calm her down. The viscount excused himself and ran off to call a higher-up. Will, observing the situation, said that he would speak next time. The head of the knights approached them, recognizing the Sacred Flame Squad. He apologized for his subordinates' behavior. The man went to the kingdom of Rosalt. He served in a convoy, then was blinded by his status and tried to poison the head of the family. The boy was accused of attempted murder. The young man seemed to be out of place there. Will said they accompanied the guy, knowing he was being deported. The head of the knights notices that the young man got here suspiciously quickly. Will continued his speech. They accompanied him for 3 days and no suspicious activity was noticed. If you were able to arrive in 5 days, then you were able to. After a short silence, the man sighs, saying that it's hard for him to admit it, but since Jink was able to get here, it means everything is fine. He apologized for taking up time. They'll be more attentive next time. The squad is standing on the roof, looking at the skyline of the city. The kingdom of Colt begins from here. He finally got here. The boy thanked Bogart, Will, and Karen. Without them, he would have been in trouble because of that inspection of the guards. Will wondered how the Rosalt kingdom would react if they found out that he was a magician. Maybe they'll force him to come back or just kill him. In any case, they won't leave him alone. Will has a suggestion. He suggests that you upgrade your rank in the local adventurers guild first. The young man does not have a registration for work, but the fact that he is a magician will help him. Will says that with such a rare ability, the guild is ready to provide protection. If a young man registers with Colt, he will not be able to operate in Rosalta. Jink agreed, thinking that it was better to protect himself in advance. Will put his hand on Bogart's shoulder, saying that they would go to the guild right away. The young man turned to Karen, saying that he wanted to make a bracelet with a healing effect, to practice it more precisely. The girl wanted to refuse, but then agreed. Adventurers Guild, Colt's branch, the Sacred Flame Squad has arrived at the scene. They let Dzink go ahead. The local men are fascinated by Karen's beauty. They noticed that the girl was walking with some guy, and they were wondering why she was being so friendly with him. A guild employee greets the squad good-naturedly. Will says he wants to ask for a professional certificate and raise this boy's rank. The guy behind the counter wants to take a look at his loot. The boy asks if they have a bigger place for this. The guild's backyard, the young man took out a bag. The staff thought he had a corpse in a bag. Then the guy from behind the counter said that to prove the killing of monsters, the whole corpse is optional. Jink pours out a whole bag of ears. He laughs and says he has 10 more bags of kobold and slug parts. The staff is stunned by this, not believing that the child collected all this alone. Jink warned that he had not dismembered the orcs and apologized for it. Orc carcasses fell from the storage area. There are so many of them that they have formed a whole mountain of themselves. The staff was startled by what they saw. While they stand with their mouths open, stunned by this sight, Will notices that the boy has quite a large storage. As a result, goblin magicians have 7 bodies, goblin shamans have 6 bodies, and goblins have 812 bodies. Kobolds have 41 bodies, slugs have 37 bodies. The general of the orcs is 1 body, the orcs are 119 bodies. After deducting the dismemberment fee, there are 24 gold coins and 3 gold bars. Translated into yen, that's 23.4 million yen. When a man was a Jinkuro, he couldn't earn more than 6 figures. We'll set about the rank increase. Right now, Jink has gained enough points to rank C. The people around are shocked. The guy at the table says there are too many people he killed. The employee informs that in order to get a rank D or higher, you need to take a test. If the adventurer is a swordsman, then you need to go through sparring with the examiner. It can be done right now. Jink happily agreed. The girl takes him to the arena. Karen says they will be there too. An arena for guild tests. People gathered in the stands to watch the exam. So far, Dink is standing alone. 2 men from the podium are talking. They recognize the boy the guard had talked to during the inspection. They know that this young man is a fallen refugee from Rosalt. It's amazing that Karen is messing with it. A guy approaches Dzink from behind, clarifying that he is taking the test. This is the head of the guild, Snow. He will be his sparring partner. People gather in the stands. There was a rumor that the head of the Snow Guild would be an examiner. People are wondering who his opponent is. There have already been rumors that this will be a boy who killed 100 orcs. Many people can't believe it. People are discussing this sparring, believing that the kid has already lost. The judge informs us that the promotion test is about to begin. Due to the shortage, the D and C rank tests will be combined. Guild leader Snow tells his opponent that he has heard of him. He can't wait to test his abilities. The judge also says that participants may be injured or seriously injured during the test. From the podium, Karen shouts at Dzink not to worry because she is ready to heal the boy. The men behind her are stunned. They gritted their teeth, calling the young man an asshole they envy. They want Karen to heal them too. Jink stands with his back to them and hears these men shouting for the guild leader to kill his opponent. The referee announced the start of the battle. Snow noticed that the boy would not attack first and decided to go on the offensive first. The head attacks the boy with quick movements, not giving him a chance to win. No one is surprised. After all, Snow is the head of the guild. Come to think of it, this is Jink's first time fighting a man with swords. Monsters are no match. A cut appeared on his face. The opponent says that usually sparring lasts no more than 3 minutes, but the young man apparently still has not lost his fighting spirit. Snow is very interested in this. Now Dink is attacking. His opponent's swordsmanship is level 104. If you make a mistake, Snow will immediately take the initiative. If he gapes, the head will touch him. People from the stands are discussing the battle. The fight had just begun and the young man was already wounded. The girl notices that the boy is still not bad. He has to move a lot, he doesn't even have time to rest. Karen says that even Jinka can't defeat the guild leader. Even so, the guild leader is just a human. He also has a limit to his stamina. Jink thinks about how the opponent used different techniques. He noticed that all his actions were precise and formulaic, as if according to a textbook. The boy reflects that the awe in front of him, as a veteran and an experienced fighter, has begun to disappear. He's sure he can hit it. Snow is surprised that their fight has lasted so long. Despite this, he is confident that the fight will end soon. The youth had a 27th level of swordsmanship. Normally, he wouldn't get into this fight, but he has magic. He will attack the guild leader without fear. Dodging his opponent's sword, he did a trick and stabbed Snow in the side with his sword. Karen and Will are happy that their little friend was able to strike. The men, eager for victory, are stunned. Snow, looking at the fact that his hand was covered in blood, sat down on his knees and said he was giving up. The judge declared Jinka Nonland the winner. People stood up from the stands in shock, not believing that the guild leader could be injured and even defeated. The young man is surprised that the crowd is stunned. Karen ran up to Snow, saying that she would heal him now. He stops the girl, saying that he has had enough of the potion. The boy noticed that the head was in shock. It's not surprising because he just lost to a child in a battle. The girl approached the young man and said that, as a prize, she would heal Jink, although he was not particularly injured. Will says that the young man defeated the so-called genius cult and the head of the guild. He approached Dzink and asked him to share his secret. It looks scary. The boy realizes that he is quite distinguished by this. Jink confessed to the whole arena that it was all thanks to magic. Will is shouting to the whole arena that it's all about magic. The boy won with his abilities, so it's fair. People began to wonder what level of fencing the young man had. Dink says resignedly that he has a 175th level. People from the stands are in shock. There is noise and buzzing in the arena. There are only 3 such magicians in the world. Jink must be the 4th of them. Will reveals that his abilities are now part of the sacred flame and more. Jink also has the ability to evaluate. He holds out the map which Snow is looking at. This is the proof. The boy appreciated Will's stats. The boy tells the guild leader that he is quite strong. If it wasn't for magic, the young man wouldn't have defeated him. Snow's face changed and he started to smile. He concluded that he had put in little effort. It will be a lesson to him. In any case, as the head of the guild, he assigns the profession of magician and appraiser to Dzink. He congratulates the boy on being promoted to the preliminary C rank. The young man rejoiced at this. Suddenly dumbfounded, the word preliminary pierced through Jink's head. He asked Will the meaning of it. With a wink, Will says that magicians can easily upgrade their rank to S. If a person with this ability remains at a low rank, it will have a bad effect on everyone. It's just a security measure. That's why they gave me a temporary C rank. Jink screams that the guy told him that he could easily raise his rank. The boy doesn't understand why he took this test. There were reasons for this. Such a rare profession is an indispensable human resource. If a person is unable to defend himself, then an escort is provided. Wherever a person goes, he will be accompanied. The young man doesn't like it. Will explains that this is why it was necessary to evaluate combat abilities. That's also why there are a lot of people in the arena. Jin became interested, and he asked Will why he was helping him. The guy replied that he was just wondering what would happen to the young man after he leaves the country. Considering that Jink is a magician and an appraiser, maybe the boy will be able to reach the SS rank. The young man did not know that there was a rank higher than S. If an adventurer has an SS rank, then no one can control them. A person can be on the same level as the owners of castles or a country. The boy has a lot to experience, but does he want to try to achieve it? Clenching his hand into a fist, he thought about deportation, contempt, and fleeing Rosalt. Jink will show them all with his magic. SS rank sounds good. While in the carriage under escort, he does his homework. His exam is still half a month away. He hopes to make it. Suddenly, the squad outside shouts that they have been attacked. The leader orders you to protect the carriage and not relax just because they are kobolds. You can't let Dzink be touched. The boy got out of the wagon with an idea to help the squad. This is a great chance for him to test his skills in water magic. He created a water ball and directed them towards the kobolds. They thought they were going to die, but they were just doused with water. Dzink failed and he ran away from them. He needs to focus. We need to remember the training. It's not just water, it should be heavy and fast like a lead ball. Dink concentrates and starts trying again. The next water ball shattered the kobolds' bodies into pieces. Now they understood the boy's power, which made them very scared. It's all thanks to magic. Dzink had water magic from the very beginning. He needs to be more careful when he's aiming because he can let people down. The squad apologizes for interrupting his studies. They should guard him better. Jink asks them not to worry about it because he just practiced magic. He's learning. He is currently preparing for the exam on his way to the capital of the Kingdom of Colt. 2 weeks ago after the test, the Sacred Light squad and Jink came to the mansion. A boggart stood in front of the entrance. The boy asked where they were. Will said it was Count Brando's mansion. They will stay here. Will asked Jink not to worry. Count Brando is quite famous. The guy says he's different from those aristocrats who consider themselves superior to others. The aristocrat also took care of Will when he was little. The guy thinks it's a good idea to have an affair with such a person. They are in the mansion. The maid takes Mr. Dzink and the Sacred Flame squad to the Count's office. The Count greets the new guest of his mansion in a friendly manner. He introduced himself as the Count of Colt's Kingdom, Nicholas Brando. If you need anything, the boy can contact him. The young man introduced himself by his name and asked not to look at the fact that he was an S rank. He admitted that they don't know how to do much. They shook hands and the Count noticed that the boy was very polite. It was time for the meal. The table is sumptuously set. Nicholas Brando addresses Dzink and the gentleman from the Sacred Flame and tells everyone to enjoy the meal. After the canned food from the camp, the food on the table is simply divine. The boy has a 4th level of courtesy. Nicholas Brando addresses Dzink, saying that he successfully escaped from Rosalt. The Count is interested in what the young man plans to do next. The boy says that he wants to get away from the Kingdom of Rosalt, travel to the Kingdom of Colt and increase your rank. Eventually, after Colt, settle in the Yamato Kingdom. After that, the boy plans to enroll in high school in the Yamato Kingdom. But unexpectedly early, he was able to get an S rank. Nicholas Brando explains that the S rank can be considered an aristocratic status. Even if Jink goes to Yamato, people from Rosalt can get to him. The boy says he doesn't want to stay in one place for long. His plans include traveling the world and gaining new experiences. The Count suggests that the young man go to Koralt, the capital of the kingdom. There is the most prestigious high school in the kingdom. Although it's difficult to get there, the Count thinks the boy will succeed. If Jink gains experience, he simply has to go to the nearest town of Hamel. The young man knows about this city. Hamel is built right above the kingdom's largest dungeon. Its depth is 80 floors. No one has ever been able to reach the lowest point. Monsters of various sizes are constantly appearing there. It's a real adventure. Karen reminds Dzink that in order to enter the school, it is necessary to pass the entrance exams. The young man assured that he would study on the way. The girl considers him purposeful and admits that she is not very good at reading. The Count tells Dzink that he can introduce him to some kind of adventurer squad. When he goes to the capital, the young man will pass through the territory of the aristocrats familiar to the Count. Jink can stay at his mansion in Koralt. The boy has a privilege. He can introduce himself on behalf of Nicholas. His son is Jinku's age. He also wants to take the entrance exams. The Count hopes that they can become friends. The young man is not used to this and he is a little uncomfortable. Mentally, he says goodbye to his past and present. When he was a Jinkuro, his every day was similar to the previous one, but now he is filled with enthusiasm and constantly learns something new. Jinkuro apologizes to himself for wasting his time. The boy thanks the aristocrat and agrees to the proposal. He also thanks the Sacred Flame Squad. It was a pleasure for the guys to deal with him. The boy is going to meet with the Tears of the Dragon and return to Rosalt to resolve matters with his brother, and then return to Koralt. So Dink went there and is immensely happy about it. However, Jinkuro did not have to suffer so much. When he was a guest at the aristocrat's mansion, the young man was studying. After fighting monsters, I studied at the camp. The aristocrats who sheltered the young man received from him a magic item and a card of appreciation for hospitality. And he studied and studied. Dzink is informed that an inspection will be carried out now. He was asked to get out of the carriage because they had arrived in Koralt. The young man is shocked by the enormous size of the city. These walls are twice as big as the walls of the royal capital of Rosalt. He already really wants to walk around the city. The squad reminds that a young man can't just walk around the city. If something happens to him, they're finished. Jink sighed resignedly. The guy from the squad asks him to be patient until he passes the entrance exam. They need to go to the mansion now. The Brando mansion, the main house. The boy was greeted by Nicholas' wife Arya and son Chris. They know about the boy from his father. Jink said he wants to join the school within a month. He asks them to just call him by his first name because it makes him a little uncomfortable. Arya giggles, saying she can't offer much hospitality, but asks the young man to make himself at home. Chris invites Dzink to come with him. He wants to show him the whole house. Arya screams that the boy is tired after the trip. There is one weakness in all the advantages of Jinkuro. He had overworked himself and reached the limit of his endurance. Mom and her son are stunned by this sight. Royal Palace Steak. A subordinate informs them that a magician has arrived. According to the aristocrats, he wants to enroll in a high school call. The head ordered to find out more about the boy. Chris shouts to the maids for someone to take Dzink to the infirmary. At this moment, the young man is happy that he has achieved the maximum level of evaluation. The entrance exams for the magic department of the Colt Kingdom High School are already starting. That's why Jink studied so hard on his way to this capital. The boy had heard that it was very difficult to get into this high school. Jinkuro recalls his past life, thinking that in Japan this exam would not have been so difficult. The young man studied so much that he fainted, but I was able to boost my magic experience. Although it looked terrible, the family that sheltered him took great care of him. Chris is sitting somewhere nearby, behind Dzink. The new friend sees that the adventurer is very quick to answer questions. He's trying really hard too. The bell rang. The written part of the exam is over. Next up is a test of magic in practice. Students are asked to show their best. The examiners will evaluate the type and rarity of the abilities. The first person called was number 783. It was an S-rank adventurer, Mr. Jink. He responded to the examiner's words and noticed that even applicants were addressed as Mr. While Jink thinks he's going to use magic to attack, the rest of his peers are whispering, wondering at his rank. They're wondering where the boy is from and how he'll do on the test. Dusty Panom, Marquis of the Colt Kingdom. He says that Jink has the skill of magic and magic evaluation. Looking at the characteristics of the man, the young man sees that he has appreciation, water magic, courtesy, and humanities. Looking at Mr. Jink's characterization, Dusty Panom tells him that he is not very good at water magic, but notices that others have little healing ability. The young man realized that it was unpleasant to be the object of evaluation. The Marquis asked to demonstrate his skills, to which the boy happily responded. To begin with, Jink wanted to show a water balloon. He practiced magic on the way in the carriage. Chris and Jink are walking around the Royal High School building. A new friend says that what the young man did was incredible. The water cyclone was especially cool. Jink laughed awkwardly. Due to the fact that he went too far with applying magic to the equipment, Jink sprayed everyone with a water cyclone. The boy is worried that he may be deducted points for such a ridiculous case. In any case, this Marquis of Peng is quite a high-ranking aristocrat. If that's the case, then he can tell the king about the boy. And the fact that the young man is a magician is becoming known in Rosalta faster than he could have imagined. The king asks Dusty Panam how everything went. The Marquis reports that everything is fine. In addition to magic, Jink also possesses swordsmanship and physical strength. The king of Kola, Namal Kal. His Majesty Panam also says that the boy also has a large storage. The king listens very attentively to the Marquis' reported information. In addition, Dink passed the written part of the exam by 96%. This is quite good. Few people have achieved such results. Panam believes that the young man will be able to get into the first class of the magic faculty. The others in the king's meeting room begin to get indignant after the Marquis words. They don't understand how this is possible because Jink is still a child. The man wanted to object, but Namal Kal stopped him. His Majesty replies that he understands the men's concern, but asks them what about humanity. One of his subordinates had heard that Jink had tried to poison his father. If a person with such power became a villain, it would be a threat to the stake. Dusty Panam asks you not to worry about it. According to his assessment, he can say that he does not see Jinka as a sinner. Also, Sujutsu skills are extremely low for a descendant of Nonlands, but their family is famous for wielding a spear. The Marquis touched on the topic of a fallen member of the Nonland royal family. Panam believes that perhaps he was accused of Rosalta and was unjustly exiled. In any case, Jink is an aristocrat and a man with power. I don't like it either. The man thinks it's worth paying attention to. Namal Kal says that the boy was exiled because of his inability to use a spear. Or there could have been other reasons for Rosalta. Standing up abruptly, His Royal Majesty said that it was easy to find out. The subordinates followed the king and also stood up. Namal Kal reported that Dzink was exiled in Rosalta, not knowing that he was a magician. The king orders the place to be prepared. As he leaves his office, he declares that their country will become a haven for the magician Jink, but they will not use his abilities for their own benefit. A few days later, Chris is happy for Dzink because he got a passing grade. Only 3 people were able to get into the first class. The boy, looking at the paper, thinks that he passed, even though he wet everyone during the test. Jink congratulates Chris on getting into the 2nd grade and being able to do it. His new friend winked happily at Dzink. He had heard from his mother about the invitation to an audience from the king. Chris asks Dzink if he has a formal outfit in his wardrobe. Everyone saw the boy only in ordinary clothes. The young man is a former aristocrat. He exchanged all his belongings for funds for deportation. Creating an assessment card for the aristocrats brought money. Jink thought about going shopping in the city. Chris answered the boy's question positively. He also recalled that the residence for applicants is a base for exploring the labyrinth of dungeons. And something else, it is also a base for finding human resources. Coal, a factory of prohibited goods, Dzink was presented with the top 10 products. Buying and selling prohibited goods here is normal, but Jinkuro is not used to it. He tells the seller that he needs a product with a level B or higher. Dink, thanks to his ability, looks out for what is needed from the crowd. He found what he needed. The girl's name is Nina. She is 12 years old. The seller of prohibited goods wanted to get rid of it, but when he was carrying the goods, a pack of dogs attacked the item and bit it. It is because of this that this item has become a prohibited commodity. The cost is 1 gold coin and 3 silver coins. Jink happily agreed. The seller said that the boy needed to put his blood on the girl's neck. Piercing his finger, he did as he was told. After that, a magical pentagram appeared under their feet, and the salesman chanted a spell. Nina, falling to her knees, said that she would serve the boy faithfully. The purchase process was completed, and Jink invited the girl to come with him. The young man said that they had arrived at the place. He returned with the girl to Count Brand's house. Jink decided to ask the girl and decided to find out where she was from. 12-year-old Nina was born into a poor farmer's family. They ran out of money in the winter, and they got rid of her like an extra mouth in the house. Her new father told her that she had been abandoned. At first, Jink thought it was a common story, but it wasn't an easy decision for his parents. After the second part of the story, the boy broke out in sweat from exertion and stopped asking her questions. He looks at the girl bent over with fatigue and impotence and realizes that her father got rid of her too. Dink tells Nina that he gives her 5 orders: always obey, do not harm, do not lie, and do not leak information, and also not to do anything that will be directed against the boy. If Nina doesn't break these rules, then she can be completely free. He asks her to remember that he is not going to use the girl for malicious purposes. Jink, a kind soul, is not going to punish Nina for rudeness or mistake. If she has any questions, he's only too happy to answer them. Then the girl asked about one thing. She has a scar she offers to go to work at night. The boy is stunned and asks if Nina knows about such work at all. She answered his question positively. Waving her arms, Jink shouts that they will end this conversation because that's not why she's with him now. Nina replies that she can only help in this way. She screams at Zink that she can't do physical work, can't write or read. The girl screams what was said to her. That's your only purpose. You were born for this. Jink does not respond to these exclamations and silently hands the girl a potion to heal her wound. An ordinary potion cannot be cured otherwise. Nina doesn't understand why he gave it to her. After all, the others are not allowed to take the potion. The young man tells her to drink and says it's an order. He thinks she deserves it. Jink reports that he has the skill to evaluate other people. He tells the girl that he chose her because she has a talent for cooking. Other skills are not great, but they can also be improved. He has a request for her and he needs her strength. After healing the wound, Jink asks Nina to take a bath, then he will prepare new, clean clothes. The girl wanted to say something, but the boy interrupted her by asking if there was anything she could do to help. When he left, he only said yes. 12-year-old Nina, holding the healing potion given by Jink in her hand, began to sob. She shouted thank you after the young man. Chris asks Zink about bringing Nina. A friend notices that, as the young man said, the girl is good at cooking. Her hands move with incredible speed. Jink stands with an overflowing belly and says that he used alchemy to turn unnecessary things into bullion to get money. He used up a lot of mana potions. Chris wonders why he needs so much money. The boy said that he would also need prohibited goods. Chris asked them to talk about it in more detail from this place, but Nina distracted them. She ran to him and told him to try the cookies he had made. Taking the cookie jar, Jink said he would do it later. The girl asked him to tell her his opinion when he tried it. Chris tells Zink that Nina looks good in a maid's uniform. The boy reminds me about the conversation he started. He asks a friend where he can get illegal military goods. Because where Nina was, they weren't there. After thinking it over, Chris says that such prohibited goods can be found in the so-called agencies for the sale of prisoners of prohibited goods. There are criminals there. The dorm of the old school call, Zink, is thinking about this place. He thinks there's too much room for him here alone, but if the young man brings Nina here, he thinks it will be quite comfortable. The boy stands in a solemn outfit and reflects that he still needs military prohibited goods. He's going to need so much more, and for that he needs money. It makes him feel burdened. Chris appeared behind him, reminding him that classes would start today. They are in different classes and Chris may not go to some lessons as they are credited to him. In any case, it will be strange not to attend classes from the very first days. Girls in beautiful high school uniforms are looking at a freshman from the first grade. They had heard that he was an S-rank adventurer. One of the girls says that the rumors turned out to be true and the newcomer is very handsome. Jink walks without turning around, followed by Chris, who says it's noisy here. The girls continue to admire the boy, wondering if he has a bride. Someone understands that he is too good for them and someone wants to become his mistress. Jink tells Chris that it's like he didn't leave Rosalt and he doesn't like it. My friend is wondering why this is so. Then the young man explained that the girls were not interested in him, but in his status. The engagement won't bring him anything, but it's a big benefit for them. Chris whispers that the girls seem to be of low birth, which is why they are so desperate, because their future depends on it. Jink thinks that if the girls want money, then let them go and kill some monsters. Magic doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Besides, there are a lot of jobs that employ women. While Jink is wondering why the girls themselves can't try to reach heights instead of relying on someone else's wallet, a girl stands in front of them. She asks the young man if he is Jink. The girl introduced herself as Najenda Cole from the first grade Faculty of Politics. She's a beginner too. Jink, not paying much attention to the speech, greeted her. Suddenly, he realized that she had said her last name. This girl is the Princess of Najenda. They suddenly bowed to her. Jink nervously says that he is glad to see her and asked how she has been doing these 3 years. Najenda asks to treat her like a classmate. People are watching and whispering around, not understanding the act of the two comrades. Jink says that he is an adventurer now and this is the first year of his adventures. He also says that maybe they won't see each other often. Najenda listened to what her old friend had said and said that she was on her way to her father's business. Since Cole is a big country, royal duties are not easy either. Chris and Jink are delighted by the beauty of the princess. Jink heard someone talking rudely. Turning around, he saw a fat guy touching a boy. This fat man tells Tom that it's time to pay for their friendship. He considered the amount small. The boy said it wasn't easy for him this month. Grabbing the boy by the shoulders, the fat man asks what he wants to know, what will happen if he is not friends with him. He wants his friend to be from the Duke's family. The boy is very scared and clearly in pain. Jink asks Najenda who this fat man is. The girl said that this is the heir of the Randosal family. During middle school, he believed that he could do whatever he wanted, and many were expelled because of his fault. A fat man from the 3rd grade, it is unclear how he was able to enter high school. Najenda said his father did his best. There was no evidence, and even they, the members of the royal family, were unable to do anything. This guy approached the girl and made a bow. Najenda asked what it was just now, and the fat man giggled and explained that he was just talking to his friend. This brute wants to talk to the girl's boyfriend. Approaching him, the fat man says that he wants to hire Dzink and make the most of his S-rank. To him, Jink is a commoner who can use the Randosal family name. This annoys the young man very much. This situation reminds him of his father's situation. The fat man, wanting to grab the boy by the shoulder, asks if he listens to him at all. Jink knocked the fat man's hand away. The guy exclaims that he hit him. The fat man says that the young man will regret it. Getting into a fighting stance, the guy brags that he knows hand-to-hand combat and asks the young man to just stand still. Dzink didn't need to show off his abilities. Without changing his face or moving from his place, he punched this fat man in the face so that his nose bled like a river. Najenda and Chris were surprised by this. The boy turns to the fat man, who is sitting on the floor and bleeding, and asks if he has read the school rules. In this school, it doesn't matter who you are, what family you come from, or what class you are in. It doesn't matter if you're a noble or a commoner. The fat man began to sob and cover his nose with his hand. Jink continues this monologue, saying that it doesn't matter if you're from 1st grade or 3rd grade. No one can assault you. He reminds the sobbing guy that he's not at his high school. Turning around, Jink told the guys to go. A whole crowd gathered around this hype. Najenda thought for a moment. Chris says he would be scared if the fat man looked at him. Jink realizes that it didn't work out well. Najenda asks you not to worry about it. She asked if Jink had received an invitation from his father. It's not necessary, but it would be nice if the boy went to this event. The young man says it's an honor for him. Jink remembered that he didn't have a formal suit, and he couldn't buy one because he was saving for other things. Najenda reminded her friend that he's an adventurer, so that's okay. She gave him a new coat. A few days later, Jink arrived at His Majesty's invitation to an audience. The king introduced himself as the king of the kingdom of Kol Namal. He's happy to meet the boy. Standing on one knee and putting his right hand on his heart, the young man says that it is an honor for him to meet His Majesty. Namal Kal told the young man that he had heard rumors that aristocrats often asked the boy to make them an assessment card. The king considers it a difficult task. Jink said that everything is not as Namal Kal thinks. For making the assessment card, the young man received a reward. In that case, His Majesty wants to ask Jinka to use magic and grade for him. Having made a bow, the young man is only glad. Now he will use his magic for official work. His Majesty Namal Kal informs the young man that Najenda told him that an incident had occurred with a child from the Randosal family. He asks Jink if he thinks it was sloppy on his part. The boy replies that he knows someone who looks like this blogger. No one likes a person who shows strength and proves himself at the expense of the weak. Looking into the king's eyes, Jink says that he cannot forgive such a man. Namal Kal listens attentively to what the boy tells him. Dink, bowing his head, says that it may be early, but he is ready to accept any punishment for his offense. His Majesty smiled and said that everything was fine. He just wanted to check on the boy. He and Najenda don't care about him. King Kal also says that the young man, apparently, will not use magic with malicious intent. Jink breathed a sigh of relief after Namal Kala's words. His Majesty started talking about school. He praised the young man for doing a great job. The king can give the boy what he wants. Jink thought about what he wanted. Looking into the king's eyes, the young man thanks for such an act. He says he would like to have the right to buy prisoners' prohibited goods from an agency selling these goods. Namal Kal did not understand what they were for him. Jink explained that he was doing this in order to explore the Hamel underground maze. He wants to expand his opportunities, so he attracts talented people to this. The king still doesn't understand why exactly the forbidden goods are. The young man explains that if he hires ordinary adventurers and servants, then spies from Rosalt can hide behind him. The boy is doing this for his own safety. Namal Kal understood and tells Dzink that he is wise and not what they say about him. His Majesty wants to be his friend. An agency for the sale of illegal goods to prisoners. The guard confirmed Dzink's permission. An iron gate opens in front of the boy and Nina. They were allowed to go ahead. The young man thinks that they will find good goods. Jink tells Nina that she didn't have to follow her. It's not a good place, but it's an important experience. The children are accompanied by guards equipped with weapons. It's a terrifying picture. Someone is banging on the cage, showing their hands. Some prisoners are making scary noises. Nina was very scared of this and clung to Zinc. She wonders why the guy isn't afraid, but it's not the first time for him. The young man remembers how the seller of prohibited goods took him to the cage and offered to take any product, because the young man chooses. The man was ready to give away any product after he finished using it himself. Remembering this, Jin still feels sick of it. Still clutching his hand, he is followed by 12-year-old Nina, who is uncomfortable with this place. Dink, studying the characteristics, saw the product he was interested in. He noticed a guy named Yang, with a chain around his neck, who was fighting and had almost reached his ceiling. Of his abilities, he also has a medium-sized storage, and of his unique skills, material evaluation is S-level. Jink informs the guards that he wants to talk to this man. The guard called the guy sitting on the floor and demanded that he get up. The young man asks about the reason for the murder charge. Jan was the son of a wealthy merchant. He had a bad relationship with his father's second wife, and she decided to get rid of him. Jan attacked her with a knife during the conflict. Jink believes that it was not murder but simply self-defense. Nina says that the prohibited product is very expensive. The price is 53 platinum coins. If it's in yen, that's 5.2 billion yen. The boy thought about it because Jan already has such statistics, and if you make a payment, it will be even better. He thinks about how many assessment cards he will need to make, and he will also need a lot of space and equipment. The guard interrupts my thoughts. The man asks if Jink will purchase the prohibited product. Since he's an aristocrat, he should have enough money. Even though it was an accident, Ian is still a murderer. Therefore, it is not taken by aristocrats or merchants. The guy with the chain around his neck says his father tried to do the same thing as Jink, but the price is 10 times higher for the relatives, so it's not easy. Jan doesn't care how much money his father has. He can't face his family. Nina tells Zinc that the guy is not scary. It's not scary at all. The girl, looking at Jan, smiles. The boy looked at her and thought for a while. Standing in front of a metal grate, the young man announces that he is buying a prohibited product. Jink wonders if His Majesty will give him a mansion. Chris laughs, realizing what he's waiting for. His mom was just talking to the royal family. Jink thought it was about the land of the Brando family. His nerves gave him a stomach ache. Zinc says that Nina is learning to read and write as well as practicing cooking. Now she knows how to cook orc meat. If you don't think about what an orc is, it's pretty tasty. Ian trains in wind magic and swordsmanship. His stats are growing. Chris asked that the guy had a sword from the Yamato kingdom. Jink said it was hard to find him. The young man also noticed that Jan sometimes looked like he was thinking about something, even though Jink told the guy not to worry about anything. The boy thought about walking around the city with Ian, at the same time talking to him while they go shopping. There are a lot of people in the city. The streets are not empty. The boy, as planned, goes shopping with Jan. In the alley around the corner, someone is waiting for the young man. This person is wearing a raincoat and she's clearly watching Jink. The boy says that the potion and antidote are in this box and the food is in that one. He also asks Ian to check the number of weapons and equipment. The guy obeys the orders of the young man. Jink reminds Jan that if he has a question, he can ask. Otherwise, the squad will fail and they will be able to get lost. Someone furiously interrupted Zinc, ordering him to stop. This boy shouts that Jink should not dare to use his brother and orders him to release Jan right now, otherwise the fight cannot be avoided. Jink realized that this boy was Jan's younger brother. The boy's name is Ash and he's 13 years old. The description says he's Ian's abandoned brother. Jink finds this very sad. Looking into the face of the impudent little man, he asks what he means by this, that he wants to detain an S-rank royal adventurer. The young man does not recommend doing this. Ash shouts at Jink not to show off. He will defeat him and take his older brother away. These words angered the young man because he is the official owner. The prohibited product cost him 53 platinum coins. Ash is almost the same age as Jink, but he doesn't understand this. Yang calls out to the young man and falls to his knees, bowing and apologizing for his brother. He asks him to punish him but not to touch his younger brother. Jink looks at these humiliations in silence. Ash angrily shouts at his older brother to stop doing that. He doesn't understand how he can bow at the feet of some adventurer. The younger brother doesn't like this behavior. People gathered around and started discussing. In the eyes of the crowd, Jink looks like a real villain. There are only whispers and condemnation around them. Ian asks Ash if he doesn't hate him. The younger brother angrily shouts that he doesn't like the fact that his brother has become a prohibited commodity. Of course, Ash wants to punch Ian, but still, his older brother was smarter and better than him. Ash wants a brother like that to come back to him. The father said he would find the money and buy the prohibited goods, but Dink did it much faster. The young man says there's nothing you can do about it. He turned to Jan and said that he had said that it was pointless. Jink took out a weapon from the storage and agreed to be the opponent. After all, this was what Ian's younger brother wanted. The guy looks at Jinka and asks her to stop. Turning around, the young man winked at Jan and smiled. Ash shouts that he asked for it and started the attack. The boy, pointing the spear in front of him, flew at Zink. There is fire and hatred burning in his heart. Jink cuts his opponent's spear in half with one swing of his sword. He chopped some of the weapons into pieces. Jink pointed his sword at the boy. Ash is scared for a second, but then he sees the young man hitting his weapon in front of him so that it hits the ground. In the blink of an eye, the boy's cloak falls off. Jink wasn't going to harm any boy, he just cut the cape off his shoulders. Holding the weapon in front of the opponent's nose, the young man asks if he still wants to continue the battle. Ash calls his opponent an asshole, but before he could do anything else, he was tied up by the staff from the Adventurers Guild. One of the employees approached Zink and asked if he was okay. It was reported to the guild that he was attacked by a citizen. Ash screams for them to let him go and not touch him. Remaining calm, Jink said that everything was fine. The young man was told that they had received news from the guild and asked Jinka to go with them. The guy thought about shopping. There is nothing left to do, and he orders Jan to return without him. At home, he promised to talk to the guy. No sooner had Jink gone home than Nina came running to him, begging the young man to stop Jan. When asked what happened, the girl screams that Jan is going to die now. Nina is crying with excitement and stress. Jink ran to the room where the guy is. He quickly opened the door and was stunned by the picture. Ian is sitting with a blade pointed at his neck. It doesn't take long to turn gray from such a picture. The boy tries to take the blade away from Ian, while he asks to let him die for disrespecting his relative. Jink shouts at him to calm down. After all, if a guy dies, then the young man has wasted 53 billion yen. Zink managed to push the knife out of the guy's hands. Jan asks to punish him because he deserves it. The young man is angered by the behavior of his subordinate. They were both very tired after a fierce attempt to snatch the blade from the other's hands. Jink shouts to Jan that they will go to the maze tomorrow. The guy will have to ride with horses, guard the young man, and explore the maze. The boy asks Jan not to denigrate the situation. While Ian is thinking about the meaning of the word denigrate, he asks the young man why he would leave it like that. Jink says it's better than dying and told me not to mess around. Jan made a bow and thanked for it. He promised to work as hard as he could. Nina bursts into the room sobbing, who thinks that Mr. Jink will let Jan die. The young man comforts the girl, saying that everything is fine and he has already forgiven him. Nina is still crying, but the words have calmed her down a little. Ian started talking about Ash. Jink reassured him, telling him that his younger brother would reflect on his behavior in the guild chamber. He will not be executed. The guy says that Ash's mother-in-law has spoiled him, he needs to be looked after and he is very dear to him. Looking away, Jink said that he understood Jan's thoughts. The guy realized that the young man also has a brother. The boy tells me that his brother's name is Esther, but he doesn't behave like that. Zink really wants to know how Esther is doing now. Holding Elsa's hand, Esther asks her to at least eat a little. The babysitter lost a lot of weight from stress and began to look unwell. The boy calms her down, saying that everything is probably fine with Zink. Esther thinks that for Elsa's babysitter, an older brother is like her own son. He is upset that he is completely powerless in this situation. Someone spoke to Esther. It was his father's subordinate. He asks not to leave without permission and also informs that he will bring Esther dinner soon when he returns. Esther says that her father is not at home right now. Since he's not at home, there shouldn't be any problems. Then the subordinate asked the boy what he still thinks about this fallen one. He says to forget about Jinka, that sinner. Esther asked his subordinate father that he had absolutely nothing to do, no one to assert himself with at his own expense. After these words, the man frowned, but did not respond to the boy's statement. The subordinate told Esther to put his brother's things away and put stilettos on his shoes. The boy replies that his father ordered him to. As he left, he added that the man was an idiot. The subordinate only snorted at this. The fallen of the Nonland family. Esther understands that everyone in the city says that, even though they don't know anything about their brother. My brother never skipped training to be the heir to the title of famous spearman. Esther admired Zink because no matter what, he always continued to work. Jink was pretty good with a spear. He was doing well thanks to his efforts, but Esther defeated his brother. At first, it was just a game. Grandpa ordered Jink to practice more with the spear, but the result was still the same. Jink remained kind to his brother and said that Esther's attacks were so bold that it was hard for him to resist. With a smile on his face, the young man asked his younger brother about his movements and even asked for advice. It must have been humiliating for Jin. But the older brother always supported Esther and treated him as usual. But on that ill-fated day, everything changed. Grandpa loved Esther more and began to treat Dzink worse. It was Grandpa who spread the nickname Fallen. Jink became famous for his bad reputation and then left for an unknown destination. Esther blames herself for this outcome. The boy thinks that it was he who stole his elder brother's whole life. This upsets Esther very much. He does not leave feeling guilty for such consequences. Wiping the tears from his eyes, the boy continues down the corridor. He reflected that it had been several days since grandfather and father had been summoned to the royal palace. Esther is very interested in what they are talking about. The royal palace of Rosalta. Someone asks the other how he is going to take on this responsibility. This was addressed to the former head of the Nonland house, Nobleman Nonland. The man turned purple with rage and the veins all over his face became visible. The aristocrats are furious that the magician was sent away for a specific reason and it turned out to be a fatal mistake. Moreover, the magician escaped to the kingdom of Kal, which has nothing to do with Rosalt. It will be extremely difficult to get the magician back. The crown prince of the Rosalt kingdom, Elliot, snaps back, repeating the words responsibility. He is angry that the discussion of this topic has been going on for so long. King Rosalta is deep in thought, not knowing what to do. The other aristocrats are outraged by the prince's behavior because this issue needs to be resolved. His Highness was also involved in the expulsion of Jink, and this is also his responsibility. Elliot thought he would be quickly eaten by goblins and kobolds, but he was lucky to get to the stake. They called Dzink the agile cockroach. The prince also added that it was good that this cockroach turned out to be the magician. Elliot also added that he and his father can also become powerful magicians. The aristocrats sitting at the table were stunned by these words and opened their mouths in surprise, not believing what His Highness had said. King Rosalta asks his son to shut his filthy mouth. It's depressing the whole situation because the others weren't aware of it. The prince continues this hurdy-gurdy. He explains that it's all simple. Dzinka has his father's blood in him. Thanks to this, Elliot and the king can also become magicians. At this time, fully equipped, Jink, Yang, and Nina gathered in the dungeon maze to explore the area. There was a deathly silence in the room, after which the question was asked, which was whether Jink was the illegitimate son of His Majesty. King Rosalta looked at Elliot in amazement and asked why he had told about this. The prince grinned, then apologized to his father. Elliot said that one day he overheard a secret conversation between his father and a nobleman. He became interested, and so he overheard him. The crown prince exclaimed that his father should not worry, because he would become a ray of salvation. Elliot turned to the guard who was standing in the room and ordered him to tell the vassals to bring the best sages and a wizard. He crazily shouted that after that he and his father would learn how to become enchanters. Rosalt Elliot laughed out loud while the whole audience was in disbelief. Some subordinates who were also in the hall jumped up from their seats and started asking His Majesty what it all meant. Gordon Nonland began to panic greatly, thinking that Jink was the secret child of the king, and now the aristocrats from the hostile faction found out about it. He clutched his head, thinking that he was against the expulsion of the boy, but such is his blood, and it happened because of their position. Suddenly, the prince jumped up from his seat again, which made many people tense up. Gordon Nonland tried to justify himself and his father, but sooner or later it would have become known anyway. That's how the hidden sins of the royal family and the Nonland family came out. Meanwhile, at the manor, Esther was asking if S-rank adventurers had come to visit him. He asked if it was possible that they had come to his father or grandfather. In response, the butler said that this was not the case, because the Sacred Flame group wanted to see Esther, the young master. The boy agreed, after which he said that he would be right there. He was greeted by adventurers in the living room. Will smiled and greeted the boy, after which he said that they were adventurers from the stake Sacred Flame. After that, he pointed at another man and said that the participant of Tears of the Dragon was also with them. Alec Thunder introduced himself. He said he came here to deliver something from Jink. At this time, Karen was thinking about how Esther looked like a girl. Hearing this, the boy asked in amazement what it meant. Will asked if Esther didn't know. He said that the guild should have already passed it on. He told Esther that Dink was alive and now he was safely residing in Koralt. Hearing this, the boy was speechless. He was unable to continue holding back his emotions, which caused tears to start appearing in his eyes. Succumbing to hysteria, he asked if it was true. The adventurers just looked at Esther in silence and smiled. The boy felt better because he knew that everything was fine with his brother. Esther apologized to the adventurers because he knows that they are tired from the journey, but he really wanted to introduce them to someone else. This man would also really like to know something about Dzink. Karen immediately agreed to this proposal. After a while, there was another sigh of relief in the manor. Elsa covered her face with her hands, saying how grateful she was to God that Jink was alive. The girl was crying. They asked Will if he could tell them more about it. The guy immediately agreed and said that they would be very surprised. The guy told me that Jink is one of the 4 enchanters in the world. Elsa and Esther were surprised. The boy took out his brother's things and said that Jink definitely had appraisal and alchemy skills. And now he understood why his brother was asking for his blood. Elsa sighed and said she didn't even know, even though she had been with him for a long time. Esther told the girl that he also wasn't aware, so she shouldn't blame herself. Will noted that Jink seemed to be hiding it carefully, so it wasn't surprising. However, the guy thought it was the right decision. Elsa lowered her eyes and said that if they found out about it, he would definitely be deprived of his freedom in this country. Will apologized and said that he hadn't heard any good rumors about Rosalta. He said that he knows, for example, about the poisoning incident in the Chancellor's family. Hearing this, Elsa turned pale. Esther noticed that the girl was uncomfortable. Will said that the fact was that the king had forced the Chancellor's daughter to give birth to Dzink. That's the version the guy heard. After these words, Esther also turned pale. There was a deathly silence in the room. Will realized that he had said too much, but it was too late. Everyone stared at him in silence. Suddenly, Karen jumped up and hit the guy, scolding him for taking the time to say this in front of Esther. She exclaimed that Will had already promised to be careful. The guy apologized for saying too much. Esther started shaking as he asked if this meant that he and Jink weren't siblings. Elsa hugged the boy and reminded him not to forget to breathe. After these words, with a great weight on his soul, Esther took a deep breath and asked the guys to continue the story. Elsa said she would tell this story. The current King Rosalta ascended to the throne with the support of the Chancellor, and they had one secret, the truth about Dzink's birth. The king was unhappy with the state of affairs, and to amuse himself, he called the Chancellor's daughter to him. After that, without thinking twice, everything happened. Obviously, the princess of a neighboring country, who is his wife, could have known about this. And because of this, there was a breakdown in marriage, and the king's position deteriorated rapidly. But they managed to hide the fact that the daughter of a rather famous family of the Chancellor was involved. They couldn't use brute force. As a result, the girl who was pregnant with Jink became the wife of Gordon from the Nonland family, who ruled the kingdom. She used to be a maid for the Chancellor who worked in their house, but the aristocrat didn't like it. He didn't want to let a grandson who didn't have his blood become the heir. And as a result, this aristocrat, on the day of the Chancellor's family party, added a slow-acting poison to the wine and food. Jink was also supposed to be present, but he refused to practice with the spear and stayed in the mansion, while the aristocrat and the maid left the mansion that day. Nothing happened. But along with that girl, Elsa's son and husband, who were servants, were also poisoned. Alex said it was just a terrible story. Elsa said that the aristocrat and Gordon had warned her that if she told anyone this story, she would be finished too. She exclaimed that she couldn't even prevent Mr. Jink's exile. After these words, she could no longer contain her emotions and began to cry. Esther told the girl that it wasn't her fault, and he's glad she told him about it. He thought that in the end, his brother wasn't even real to him. They wanted to erase his existence. Will said that only the two of them knew about it. The royal family is now being criticized in the royal capital. Karen said that Dzink was kicked out for a reason. As a result, the crown prince did not like Jinka's real background, and the royal palace was in turmoil. The guys noted that Will knows the details well. The guy agreed and said that all the minor aristocrats who visit the palace will not give up money and will easily sell information. Because of these words, Esther was very surprised. The guy also said that the aristocrats' hemorrhoids had worsened. After these words, Esther took hold of his head. Alec thanked the adventurers for letting him down, but he, a participant in Tears of the Dragon, returns to the stake. He declared that this country is a sinking ship. Will asked Esther what he thought. The boy frowned and said that there was nothing good left in this country. He turned to Karen, who is the leader of the sacred tribe. He confidently asked the girl to make him her servant. Karen blushed and asked the boy what he was saying. Esther said that, moreover, his family would be convicted and he would become a criminal and be serviced. However, he wanted to become a servant to Karen to be with her so that she would then hand him over to her brother. By doing so, he will buy the sins of the Nonland family. Elsa exclaimed that she would also become a servant. She said she had nowhere to go, and she also wanted to be with Mr. Jink. Will asked if they were sure. The guys agreed and decided to hurry up with packing. All this time, the butler was listening outside the door. He thought that this house was finished too. He wondered if he should take all the gold and leave. Karen looked at the boy with predatory eyes and asked him, as her servant, if he would follow all her orders. The boy agreed. When she heard this, she dressed Esther in a maid's dress. The boy blushed and asked what it meant. Karen smiled and said that everything was as she wanted. She said that he was no longer the heir of a high-ranking aristocrat. They'll recognize him right away if they don't disguise themselves because he's famous. Esther exclaimed that it could have been done without women's clothes. Elsa said that it suits the boy very well. Esther was confused. He said it was a good thing his brother couldn't see. After a while, they were on their way in a cart. Alec noted that this was the famous carriage with the guild's hippogriffs. They will drive non-stop. With the monster on a leash, they raced on their way. Karen said that she is still recovering. The boy exclaimed that she was a demon. In his mind, Esther thought about his brother, and then noted that he should call him Jink, because they were no longer brothers. At that time, there were many people in the hometown of Hamel. The funny thing was that it was called the City of Adventurers. Nina pointed to the side and asked the gentleman to look there. Jink said that they had come to the entrance of the maze. It was bigger than the guy expected. Jan said that the building seemed old. There was a huge hole in this place in the past. He heard that adventurers use it as a hunting ground with monsters, and that's why it looks like a small town. Yang said they might meet unpleasant people, but otherwise, it's a relatively safe place. Jink noticed that Jan knew a lot. The guy said there was something similar in his parents' house. Sometimes his father took him on field trips. Ian said that the competition was made up of average adventurers from the clans. Nina asked what a clan was. The guy said that this is a group of adventurers consisting of several groups. Large clans can have up to 100 members. You can join a clan as a group. They have many advantages such as secure bases. There are many influential people working at Hamel. Some of them use clans for protection. Yang said that for them, as merchants, it was quite a dangerous competitor. Sometimes people are more terrifying than monsters. Nina said she hoped they wouldn't meet anyone like that. Jink said that first of all they need to go to the guild and gather more information. After a while they were already in the guild. Nina exclaimed that compared to the guild in Koralt, it was much bigger. Ian said that this city is not called the City of Adventurers for nothing. Entering the building, Jink sighed and thought that this place looked like a cafeteria in a shopping mall. There was a completely different atmosphere and people there. The girl at the reception greeted them and asked what they were interested in. Jink said that they were adventurers, when suddenly someone interrupted him. The drunk man asked if they were joking, because he did not believe that two frail guys and a girl could be adventurers. He said that if they didn't want to die there, then they needed to find escorts or join a clan. He shouted that even there they would be ridiculed. The girl asked the man Philip to be quiet because she was talking. She apologized and said that the man had been drinking a little. Jink said that everything was fine, after which he handed over his guild card. When the girl saw her, she was shocked. She exclaimed that he was S-ranked. Jink thought it had happened again. There was a commotion in the building. The adventurers said they couldn't believe it and asked if their clan's recruits knew about it. Jink said that although he has an S-rank, his real skills are not that high and he still has a lot to grow. The girl nervously agreed and then told him to go to the 5th floor. She thought that she urgently needed to inform them that an enchanter had arrived. The adventurers in the hall were surprised that they were sent straight to the 5th floor, because it's rare. After going upstairs, the guys rested. Nina said that the sofa is very soft. Jink asked the girl if she wasn't nervous at all. Suddenly, a girl came into the room and thanked you, Jink, for waiting for him. She said she was going to be the guy's manager. Her name was Mona. She said that they provide a manager for special high-ranking adventurers in their guild. The guy can always ask her questions. Jink understood why everyone was so jealous. He said that he hopes for long-term cooperation and fruitful work. The girl agreed. She said she was going to tell him about the maze's features. The key feature of the maze is the endless number of monsters. In addition, the monster's corpse disappears, leaving only some part of the body, but after a few hours the corpse will resurrect. There is also a chance to receive a magic stone or a valuable body part after death. They call it a drop. There, Jink can find armor and magical items in chests scattered throughout the maze. The guy thought that the maze was quite thoughtful, as if someone had specially created it. The further the guy goes, the stronger the monsters will be, so he shouldn't do anything rash. None of the adventurers reached the end of the maze. Inside the maze, the climatic conditions may differ from those on the surface. For example, it can be important, cold, hot, or otherwise. Therefore, Mona recommended warming Zink's clothes or buying winter ones. First of all, it is important for them not to forget about good shoes. She also recommended buying extra clothes. Yang said that during an escape or a fight, you can get injured and it will be fatal. Mona agreed and said that if they were looking for things for adventurers, they should go to the guild store. Jan thought she was pushy. Mona turned to Jinka and said that she had a request from the guild. It was a collection of magic stones. Standing at the entrance to the maze, Jink said that due to the war last year, there is currently a shortage of magic stones in the Kingdom of Kal. Besides, not all adventurers collect them. Magic stones are like batteries in this world. Using the power of magic stones as a battery, you can light a fire or get water for natural needs. This is the kind of thing that is necessary in everyday life. Nina said that low-ranked adventurers have to protect themselves, so it's also hard for them to collect stones. And the high-ranking ones go deep in search of rare treasures. For all of them, this is an indispensable thing. Jink said they would just hunt the slime, which often drops magic stones. Ian said that for them, the newbies, this is an easy opponent. Jink warned them that this was not a training battle, but a real one. Whatever enchantments he uses will depend on them. Because of this, the effect is halved. They were in an open space now and no one was around. Suddenly, they were surrounded by slugs. Jink warned them and told them that they were starting from the ceiling. He said he would help them with treatment whenever possible, but killing the slime was a priority. He said Nina was on the right, and if it got too dangerous, she should tell him. He told Ian to use the sword and wind magic. After that, everyone quickly grouped up. Nina was clumsy, so Jink told her to calm down and remember her training. When Nina was in danger, Jink used a water arrow and burned the girl. He told her to move and then she would quickly get used to it. He also told her to keep an eye on the enemy's movements. The girl agreed, after which her fight went much easier. At this time, Ian was calmly dealing with the monsters. He cut them and then finished them with wind magic. Jink said they were doing a great job and they would deal with the monsters quickly. After some time of the battle, the monsters began to disappear. Nina noticed that the slime was actually disappearing. Ian said that because of the enchantment, he didn't feel tired. Every time he killed a slime, his body glowed. Jink said that if they had looked at their stats during the battle, they would have seen that they gained experience points immediately after killing. Most likely, their bodies absorbed the life force of the monsters remaining in the form of experience points. The progress is different from their training in the mansion because the leveling took place during real battles. Nina said that at first she was scared, but over time her movements improved, and now she wanted to raise her level. Jink said that it's not about the concept of a level or the passage of a maze. He invited the guys to complete their task and complete the maze. Ian said that according to the map, there was a slug room on the 3rd floor. People with rank B and below were not allowed to enter. The exception was the magicians. A large number of different monsters can appear in the room. Once they enter there, they will not be able to exit after a certain time has passed or until all the monsters have been destroyed. Jink said he had potions. Thanks to his enchantment, she will always heal their wounds. If you add up all the enchanted items, then according to statistics, they will be able to reach rank B, but they should not forget about safety and overdo it. They quickly reached the 3rd floor. They didn't understand where the people were. Suddenly, they noticed that there were a lot of slugs. Nina exclaimed that she couldn't move. Jink said that there were more of them than he expected. He told the guys to move away, after which he used a powerful spell that blew the slime into the storm. It was a water cyclone. With one blow, he dealt with them. Jink said that the maze of increased complexity was not so simple. Jink said that a water cyclone consumes a lot of mana. Before the slime could respawn, they needed to collect magic stones and slime jelly. Jink handed the bag to Jan and started drinking water himself. Nina approached the guy and apologized, saying that it was too early for her to fight. Jink told the girl not to worry because he was too naive. He said that they had gained some experience points now and their levels were almost level. Ian said that it would be wiser to just collect the stones now. Jink thought about telling the guild to fix their stats. An S-rank adventurer will become more valuable by bringing so many magic stones. Thus, they destroyed the slugs as best they could and didn't pay attention to anything else. The adventurers who passed by were surprised that they were still killing slugs. Besides, Nina was progressing. Jink noticed that she had acquired the skill Shield Mastery. Now she's going to be a great tank. As a result, they not only killed a lot of slugs but also gained a lot of experience points. Jink said that with such levels, they would be able to go lower. Ian said that there was a room with goblins on the 5th floor. Nina said she was afraid to fight the goblins because they often attacked her village and they stank. Jink said that he doesn't get such an expensive reward and the room itself stinks. He said they weren't going anywhere. Ian said there was a choice, the 9th floor with kobolds or the 15th floor with orcs. Their rewards will already have some value and the smell will be better. With the current stats, hunting kobolds would be the best solution. Since the orcs are stronger, you will need more weapons. They need to set up camp and prepare both physically and mentally. Nina exclaimed that they were like real adventurers. Jink said that if the orc meat falls out, Nina will be able to cook it. Quickly enough, they arrived on the 9th floor in the kobold room. There was a magic circle next to the wall, and they assumed that this was the kobold's objection point. He was positioned against the wall so that the kobolds could only be attacked from one side. Jink told Jan to attack with both magic and sword. If he gets tired, Jink will take over. He told Nina to follow Jan. At that moment, monsters began to come out of the magic circle. Together, Ian and Nina rushed to the attack. The guy was quickly killing monsters and Nina was not far behind him. The girl deftly used her shield to defend and her sword to attack. Jink said he would raise the water wall, so they needed to approach him. When they gathered in one place, Jink fenced them off. The monsters couldn't get to them. The guy said that this was the first time he was using it in real combat, and they couldn't break through such a wall. He told the guys to take a break and pack their things. Magic stones and kobold knives will interfere in a fight if they are not removed. Nina said she almost tripped over it. Jink said that something needs to be done, but first it's important to deal with the kobolds. The guy exclaimed that the water wall would fall soon, and the second round would begin. Jan told Jin that he had an idea. He stated that they can speed up the process. He asked why not attack them with magic. Nina can't even use ordinary magic, but if Jink enchants her things, she can. The girl exclaimed that she also wanted to use magic. Jink said she doesn't have much mana. Ian stated that if they gave her a potion, her mana would increase and she would be able to cover for them. It's going to take a lot of mana, but it's worth it. The girl asked if she would have to drink a lot of mana potions, after which she said she agreed. Jink sighed and agreed. He congratulated Nina on being a temporary magician, and now she can use a water balloon. By this time, the kobolds had already surrounded them. Jink told everyone to get ready, and then he and Ian started shooting magic. The monsters died very quickly. At this time, Nina was actively using the water ball to deal with the enemies. The girl was pleased. Sometimes she would pause to drink a potion, and Jink would rush her. Immediately after that, she shot the balls again. After a while, Jink created a water barrier again and announced a break to pack his things. Suddenly, Nina started crying and said she wanted to go to the bathroom. The guy sighed and said that she had drunk too much. Nina apologized. Jink said there was nothing he could do, and then he created a box. Nina asked what it was. The guy said he had enchanted a magic box and she should use it. The girl was in shock. The guy said they would turn away and not look there. She blushed and said it was an intimate matter. Suddenly, Ian also said he wanted to go to the bathroom. Jink was shocked. Nina asked the guys not to look because otherwise she would be offended. Jink thought it was strange because she was his servant. On the third day, the guys had already moved to the 15th floor with the orcs. After being hit in the chest, the orc fell to the ground dead. Nina said in surprise that they had defeated him. Jink said it was still hard for them to fight the orcs. Together they can win, but they need to become stronger. Jan said that they were unharmed only because of Jink. He thought that now he could overcome his fear of the orcs. A joyful Nina held the meat in her hands and said admiringly that she already wanted to cook it. Jink was amazed that she was actually going to cook orc meat. Together, they leveled up more than Jink expected. This place made them real adventurers. The guy said it's been 3 days. He suggested that the guys return home after this room. Suddenly, Ian said that this room was the room of the boss general of the orcs. Jink said that Nina would cover them from behind, and he and Ian would attack with magic. The guys accepted the order and entered the room. The monster standing on the huge magic circle woke up. Jink shouted the command to move into battle, after which they, along with the monster, rushed into battle. They all followed Jink's orders. At this time, the monster was trying to hide from the attacks. Suddenly, the monster swung violently, when suddenly Jink rose into the air with one jerk and plunged his sword into the orc's chest. Blood gushed out like a river, after which Jink shouted a command to Jan. The guy also quickly used a jerk and hit the monster on the neck. In an instant, the orc's head fell to the ground. Nina shouted joyfully that they had won. She said that the orc general's meat was delicious. Suddenly, the girl noticed something on the ground. It was round and soft and it smelled different. Dink asked in surprise if it wasn't orc meat. Jan blushed and stopped Dzink. He said that he had seen this before and this item is an orc egg. While Nina was trying to pick up the object, Jink shouted loudly, stopping the girl. After a while, the guys went outside, where they could eat Nina's signature orc stew. The girl said that the orc egg was quite rare, so she couldn't cook it. Jink laughed nervously. Suddenly, someone behind the guys said that it smelled pretty good. The young man said what an unexpected meeting it was. Jink asked who he was. The guy said that it was very rude, after which he introduced himself, saying that he was an adventurer, a master from the Big Tree clan named Luca. He said he was glad to meet the enchanter. Jink immediately saw that the guy was also an S rank. Like him and Karen, the guy also had a rare skill. He wondered if it was possible to reach S rank just by having an ability. His archery was quite good, and Jink thought it was scary to imagine how good this guy was. Ian said that the Big Tree is the 3rd largest clan. Jink asked what they wanted from them. He wondered if they really wanted to invite them to the clan. Luca turned around and hesitated. There was a crowd of hungry adventurers behind him. They looked at Nina's soup and asked the guys to give them some food. Luca said that he returned from the lower floors to eat, but he was attacked by a monster and got stuck for a while. He was a little ashamed, and he didn't think he would be able to walk to the surface if he didn't eat. Jink thought that it wasn't the encounter with the monster but the food. However, Luca was uncomfortable in front of the guys, so he said he would pay them. Dink agreed and said that it was not necessary to pay. Instead, he asked them to tell him about the clan. Luca said he would tell me what he could. He thanked Zink for his cooperation. He apologized to Nina and asked if she could cook more meat. The girl quickly agreed. The guy asked Ian to help, which he quickly agreed to. After a while, they had a huge amount of food. The adventurers ate and cried with joy. Nina smiled and said she would give supplements to those who didn't have enough. They called Nina the goddess who blessed them. Luca said that in the maze he ate only dried meat and bread. Jink said he put all the ingredients and cooking utensils in the storage. Luca said that now he would tell you about the clan. There are 2 large clans in Hamel, Beyond Purgatory and Messenger. They say that together with the Big Tree there are 3 main clans, but it is smaller than these 2. These clans have a rigid hierarchy and struggle for power. Those who are unable and those who lack skills will be at the very bottom of the hierarchy. The low-ranked participants go crazy and go into the maze. Those who cannot pay the fee simply leave the adventurers. And those who left are considered traitors and cannot join any Hamel clan. Nina asked if it was really that important. Luca said that the guild rules don't say that, and they're not the public rules of this town. And those who don't like such arrangements join the Big Tree. Their desire is to be free. LKKA helped those in need. Those who were expelled from these 2 clans come to him. They separate the neck from the head themselves, and many become servants because of debts. These clans have a pretty bad reputation. Only their names are different, but the situation is the same. And there are many people in the clans who need help. That's why they didn't have any food. If possible, they won't interfere. Luca thanked the guy for the food and said they had to go. Jink thanked for the information. The guy said they were about to leave and asked why they shouldn't go together before leaving. In the end, the guys did just that. After some time spent on the road, they came to the entrance to the maze. Jink happily said how long it had been since he had seen sunlight. Luca said that the orc stew was very tasty, and he hoped that they would meet again. Jink also wished the guy good luck. Suddenly, Luca warned the guy that these 2 clans were eyeing him. He told Jin to be careful. In the end, he left. Jink asked the guys how they enjoyed their first visit to the maze. Nina said it was a lot of fun. Yang also stated that they had raised the level and earned money. It's more effective than hunting monsters in nature. He asked if he could gather people in the mansion and if Jink could organize his clan. The guy thought that he wasn't sure if he could do it, but if he tried, then anything could happen. He said that there would be an exam at school soon, so we need to return to the royal capital, and the guys can rest. The next day, the guy was already in the backyard of the Adventurers Guild. He provided Mona with a lot of bags of items and said that it was all in 3 days. He said that if it wasn't enough, then he could collect more. The startled girl said it wasn't necessary and she thought it would be enough. Even though she wanted Jink to bring more, it was too much. She thought that now she would have to count it all. Suddenly, she saw something interesting. There was an orc egg on the ground, for which she thanked the guy. Jink said they found him by accident and he didn't know what she was thanking him for. Mona said that most adventurers sell it directly to merchants, and he decided to give it to the guild. An orc egg usually sells for a high price. Jink thought he liked meat better. Suddenly, someone stopped next to them and said that it was not worth it for a young girl to keep eggs. Mona noticed that Dan was already there. Jink noticed that it was probably the same S-rank master. The man said that he was the head of the guild. Dan, winning the boss dungeon in 3 days was pretty good. He said that Jink had completed the requirements for the B-rank exam. Dan stated that there would be an endurance test. You need to withstand his sword attacks for a certain amount of time. Jink was a guy with a high rank and a rare skill. This will be a test of how he can protect himself with his abilities alone. Jink thought that Will had said something similar about the Kalia exam, the ability to defend yourself. The guy said he still wasn't sure if he could handle it. Mona said that even if he fails, he shouldn't worry because there won't be any problems. Suddenly, Dan said that he didn't care what class or rank the guy was, so he shouldn't get carried away. Jink exclaimed, which he didn't think he would. Dan asked if the guy was sure because young men with great powers always want to show themselves. The evil Jink said that he understood and that he would not hold back, but then Dan should not blame him. Mona asked if they were done. She said they could start the exam. Jink asked what to do with the magic stones. Jink was equipped from head to toe with various amulets and things that enhanced his physical strength. Jink wondered if he had gathered too much physical strength for a routine endurance test. He pushed these thoughts away, saying that Dan was to blame for himself. After a while, they met in the arena. Dan said that the guy can use protection magic or a sword. The exam will go on until all the sand in the clock runs out, and if Jink attacks a man, he will be disqualified. As soon as the clock was turned over, the guy grabbed his sword. Almost immediately when the exam began, Dan rushed to the attack. Noticing how successfully Jink defended you from all attacks, Dan frowned. After one of Dan's attacks, he himself flew back. The judge stopped the trial. The man said that he had heard that Jink had defeated Snow, and now he understood how he had done it. He said the guy made him out of breath. Jink smiled and said that Dan was a master. He was aiming at the wrong places and collided with the sword. He thought that it was even more difficult with a live opponent. Dan said he was slow and he had to hurry up. He said that Jink was out of breath too. He set up the protection incorrectly and damaged the sword. Their swords crossed in the same place, but Dan managed to strike several times properly. Jink said he was just defending himself and it wasn't a violation of the rules. People in the audience were shouting about how incredible the guy's defense was, and they didn't even understand anything. Dan exclaimed that he had lost, and Jink passed the B-rank exam. He cringed and said he was going to snap, after which he asked Dzink not to look like that because he would cry. Jink thought that this old man was cunning. Suddenly, Dan told Dzink to go back because they needed to talk. After a while in the guild building, the dejected adventurers sighed heavily. They were told it would be a lucrative and safe job. They asked what kind of collecting magic stones and remains was and didn't understand what kind of fool had come up with it. Dink, on the other hand, passed by in silence and smiled. Mona met the guy and congratulated him on his temporary rank. She said that in the end, there were 57,234 magic stones, as well as 4,000 kobold knives. There were also remnants of orcs. She said it would cost 108 gold coins, 87 silver coins, and 138 bronze coins. Dink said that it was not necessary to list. Mona said that because it was temporary rank B, they could no longer accompany him on safe roads, but he still needed to be careful. Dan said that the guy didn't even need an escort because he had defeated Snow with a colt. Jink reminded Dan that he wanted to talk. The man asked what Dink thought about the supply agreement. The guy said he hadn't thought about it. Dan asked if Jink remembered about the kid who got into the guild because of a fight. Jink realized that it was about brother Jan. They let him go, but his father said they could keep the boy. He came here because of him. His father is a merchant who works with the guild. He asked why not negotiate with him in exchange for an apology. Jink said that if he worked with merchants, the guild's profits would decrease. Dan thought that if this merchant found out about Jinka, he would immediately be interested. There are already so many bad merchants in the world. Dan said it was in the best interest of the guild to sign a contract with reliable merchants. He thought so, but told Jin not to give up hope about the child's father. His eldest son is a servant, and Dan did not know what the future held for his second son. He told Jink not to blame himself for what happened, but they needed to meet with him. Jink thought that even though he was nasty, it was a good idea. He said that he understood and was not against the meeting. Dan thanked the guy and told him to come to this office in 2 days. 2 days later, Jink was walking with Jan and said that he shouldn't have asked him to go with him. He asked if he wanted to see his father. Jan said that everything was fine. When they entered the room, everyone was gathered. Merchant Lawrence immediately noticed Jan. The guy grimaced, which Jink noticed. The meeting started after that. Ian's father, Yoki, apologized and agreed to re-educate his younger son, as well as make a deal on any terms. Thanks to Ian, the negotiations went better than expected. Jink thanked Jan and said that he could spend time with his family today. Jan thanked the guy. After a while, the maid Mimosa and Angie greeted Dzink because he had returned. The guy was surprised and asked if Jan hadn't returned. The girl said he was with his family now. Angie said that Ian was handsome and she wished they could see him. Suddenly, the girl remembered and handed the guy the letter. Jink noticed that the letter was from Chris. The letter told the guy to come to the Brando mansion because he has 2 servants who want to see him. Jink exclaimed loudly when he saw that these servants were named Esther and Elsa. Jink immediately came to the royal capital and met Chris. Suddenly, the guy said that Jink, it turns out, is of royal blood. Hearing this, the guy was taken aback. He asked Chris what he was talking about. The guy said it was no wonder he didn't know, and then asked Jin to calm down and listen to him. He said that Jink is not a child of the Nonland family, and in fact, he is the illegitimate son of King Rosalt. People have found out about this, and now there is real chaos in the royal family, and turmoil has begun in the kingdom. And before they got into this mess, Elsa and Esther went abroad. Will and the guys came out and said they were gone too. Dink noticed his friends in amazement. He didn't understand what was going on, but he wanted to see Elsa and Esther. The guy went into a small house where he saw his loved ones. They were sitting in ragged clothes with bread in their hands. When they saw Jink, they immediately knelt down. The guy got angry and asked who did this to them. He wanted to know who made them become like this. Karen told the guy that it was their decision. Chris told Jink not to misunderstand, but he and his mom talked him into it. Even though they are servants, they treat them like ordinary servants. They themselves insisted that they not touch their wounds. They said it was a punishment and an apology to them. Jink didn't understand the apology. Will told the guy everything that had happened before, and about Jinka's exile because of those two too, and now the guy had to condemn them. He sighed, talking about how difficult it was. He apologized to Chris and the gentleman from Sacred Flame for the trouble. Karen said that he shouldn't worry because she liked Esther in a maid costume. Jink turned to Elsa and Esther, who were still on their knees, and said that he was glad that everything was fine with them and that they had met again. He wasn't angry, and he wasn't going to punish them. He asked them to raise their heads. Karen ordered Esther to apologize to Dzink. The guy raised his head and apologized for everything his relatives had done. Elsa also joined in and said that he was in danger and he needed to be careful. Jink told them not to worry because they hadn't done anything wrong. Esther turned to Mr. Dzink, which made the guy turn pale. He shouted at him not to call him that. He said that thanks to Esther, he was able to leave the country safely. He hugged Esther and told him that he was his brother. No matter what happened, they were brothers for the rest of their lives. Elsa started crying along with Esther. Jink was told to take care of them. The guy thanked the guys. They will hand over the rest of the items later. Dink said that until Esther gets older, she and Elsa will look after him. He wanted to make the guy a commoner. It's not the best option to be a commoner who escaped from Rosalt right now, but if they're servants of an S-rank adventurer, then they can't be touched. So they will be servants only according to documents. Esther exclaimed that he would be a servant all his life, and Elsa supported him. Jink said he didn't like it. They were too stubborn. Jink thought that the crown prince was his younger brother. As soon as he found out about it, his stats changed to Nonland's fallen seed. Will said that according to the information received, King Rosalta and the crown prince have been deposed, and 3 remain empty. The queen also filed for divorce and her country rejected the union. The attack on Rosalt is only a matter of time. At that time, the aristocrat was being led to the guillotine. While the people were cheering, he said that it was a mistake and they did not know who he was. He exclaimed that he was a Nonland. The next moment, the blade fell and he died. A man was brought to the dungeon of the royal capital. He was wearing only a cape. He looked around with empty eyes. At the royal palace, the crown prince asked if they really wanted him to stay in his chambers until the troubles were over. The king came into the room. When the prince saw him, he was delighted. He asked why he had to be here. The prince did not understand what had happened. Suddenly, the king hit the guy with all his might. The prince was taken aback. The king exclaimed that if he had been silent, nothing would have happened. He beat his son with his staff until everything was covered in blood. The prince wondered if he was dead. He thought it was ridiculous to die like that. He thought it was because of Jink, because his existence had ruined his life. He wanted to kill Jink. At that time, the guy was asking Esther if the armor was suitable for him. He took her with him when he was exiled, but she has a low level. Esther said that everything is fine because it was Jink who gave this armor and therefore he is happy. The guy agreed, after which he called Jan and Nina, telling them to support Esther in the maze. He looked at Esther's current stats. First, you had to go through the dungeon with the orcs for 3 days. He told Esther that he had to reach a level where he could win on the lower floors. Ian asked if it was okay for Esther to fight the orcs right away. Esther said not to worry, because when he was in the Nonland family, he hunted monsters with the guards. While he was on his way to the stake, he was hunting low-rank monsters. However, he had to fight in a maid costume. It was Karen's order. He said there was nothing like that. Since Esther had wind magic, they wanted to raise the level of magic, mana, and Sujutsu. Nina asked if this meant that Esther would need to drink a lot of potions. Dink confirmed this. Nina giggled and thought that Esther would also feel the humiliation of wanting to go to the bathroom. As his mentor, she wouldn't take her eyes off him, and it was already time to go to the maze in Hamel. While they're gone, Angie and Mios as well as Elsa will take care of the mansion. They were confident in themselves. Jink said he felt something was wrong, so he asked them not to leave the mansion. The girls told Jink not to worry because if anything happens, they'll use the weapons he enchanted. In Hamel, Esther met Mona. She was pleased to meet him. Jink asked the girl what happened. He didn't understand if something had happened while he was gone. Mona confirmed this and asked if Jink knew about the named monster. The guy had already heard about it. Sometimes in this world, a dead human soul can become a monster. The person who utters the right words turns into the named monster, and sometimes he can retain his memory and intelligence. Jink understood and said that it couldn't be. Mona confirmed this and said that the level 15 orc general they had defeated earlier had become a named monster. The guy was amazed. The orc in turn wanted to kill Dzink. Jink couldn't believe that the orc general from the boss dungeon was a named monster. He asked if this meant that his difficulty level had increased. It's because he got a human mind. Mona stopped him and said that it was rather the opposite here because he was even more weakened. He is the same as when he was alive, his thoughts can be predicted, and he himself has become predictable. Moreover, every time he sees a woman, he is no longer interested in anything. Even low-ranked teams can beat him. After a while, everyone started calling him a fool. The problem is that the 15th floor has become too light and queues are already accumulating by the 16th. This leads to an influx of inexperienced adventurers to the lower floors and conflicts between the factions, but more and more people are not returning from the maze. So they're in a difficult situation right now. She asked if Jink could help. All the guy could use was enchantment. The main thing is not to overdo it. Mona thanked the guy for his help. On the 15th floor, Esther used wind magic to defeat the orcs. Ian told the guy that he was getting better at using magic and they were defeating them faster. The guy thanked Ian. Esther happily said that he had become stronger and it was a good workout. Jink hoped that the attack power would also increase, but because of the magic, the level went up a bit. Nina noticed that Esther had drunk a mana potion but didn't want to go to the bathroom. She thought he might have gone earlier. Dink did not catch the thought and thought that Esther was used to being patient. In any case, Esther has significantly raised his level. They rested enough and decided to go down to the lower floors. Esther said that to do this, you need to defeat that fool. They will have to face the orc general. Jink said that even though he was weak, he stank. As a last resort, Jink will attack him himself. He thought it was better not to take Nina because Oru loves girls. They found themselves at the magic circle from which the general rose. He screamed that he would kill Dzink. Esther was surprised and asked why the monster was calling his brother's name. Jink realized and exclaimed that it was Elliot and he returned. Esther asked if he had been reborn. Yang asked if the gentleman knew this man. Jink confirmed this and said that he was a fool. Elliot walked right at the guy and said he was going to kill him. Jink exclaimed that he was his opponent so he would kill him. He used a fireball. He attacked him but it didn't cause any reaction. The guy wanted to try fire magic but he wasn't able to do much. Suddenly the orc looked at Esther and confused the guy with the woman. He immediately rushed at the guy, shouting that it was a woman. Esther got angry. He raised his spear and hit the orc in the face, saying that he was a man. Suddenly, the monster was taken aback. There was a spear in his chest. Jink told Elliot not to get distracted because he was his opponent. The orc shouted the guy's name. He tried to hit him, but Jink dodged and hit him on the head. He quickly cut open the monster's skull, after which it died. Jink thought that this meeting was unexpected. Nina noticed that an egg had fallen out of it. Jink remembered Mona's words. Since Elliot turned out to be the boss, the guy didn't want to raise the egg. He wondered if Elliot had left him because he had a strong libido during his lifetime. Esther said that Will said that the crown prince had fallen. He asked if he had been executed. Jink said that an undisturbed soul runs the risk of becoming a monster. Elliot was like that. The souls of the monsters in Hamel's labyrinth are forever trapped there. He will be resurrected many times and will continue to earn experience points and items and will continue to kill adventurers. After a while, the guys went through the dungeon with the boss. Now they decided to go straight to the most popular place. After a short battle in which Jink was out of breath because it was getting harder, they finally arrived. They were on the 20th floor. It was an ore cave. A lot of adventurers with pickaxes were mining for resources. Jan noted that there were really a lot of people. Jink said that you can find various crystals here, as well as emeralds and diamonds. He offered the guys to earn money. Esther immediately said that he would mine the ore. Nina said it along with him. Jink said that he had brought a few picks with him, but they should not overdo it, because mining requires a lot of effort. The children agreed. Esther took a pickaxe and went to mine the crystals when suddenly Jan came up to him and asked if the guy could do it. Ian said that there was no valuable ore around, and it was better to try the place he had indicated. Esther asked why. Ian said that he used the appraisal skill, and he can tell that there are a lot of emeralds to be found there. Jink said it wasn't bad, and he didn't even notice how the guy was using the skill. Nina said they would check at that place. After a few strokes of the picks, Nina spoke admiringly about how many green stones there were. Esther shouted that it was an emerald. Jink thought it was fun because they were still such children. Ian laughed terribly looking at the number of stones. Jink thought that he was having fun in his own way. They asked Dzink if he would dig. The guy confirmed it and said he wanted to try something. There were a lot of stones left in that place, and he decided to collect them in a different way. Suddenly, a golem rose from the ground. Jink decided to practice earth magic. From these remnants, he created a golem. Esther exclaimed that it was unbelievable. Jink said that holding it requires mana. Although he couldn't control it well right now, this golem could be used. As the guild said, the more materials it has, the more it can withstand traps and arrows. He noted that it can be used as a shield and pass through traps. The golem can do other things as well, now they can use it to extract more ore. Suddenly, Dink heard some sounds. Jan asked what that noise was. To the side, two men were arguing over whose territory it was. Jan asked if there was something they hadn't shared. Jink said they were like adults, they had to hurry and finish the job. The fun treasure hunt was ruined. After a while, the guys reached the 21st floor. This place was called the Step. The guys were amazed that this place was so different from the whole maze. Nina said it was like they were outside. Jink said that for some reason it was bright there all day, a mysterious maze. There were green cows there and Dzink liked their meat. Esther said he liked the orc meat better. Nina asked if the two of them had already tried it. Dizgu confirmed this and said that it was when they were aristocrats. It's a delicacy because there aren't many places you can buy it. Nina asked if they would hunt them. Jan added that he was hungry. Jink remembered Mona's words about fewer and fewer people returning from the maze and thought that everything seemed to be in order. He told the guys that they would cook cow meat. At this time, huge ants were dragging the bodies of dead people. Jink quickly killed the cow and said that the meat was not delicious. He said it would be enough for the guild. Nina said it was her turn. Esther exclaimed that he would help her. They cooked a meal together. After the meal, Jink thanked them for the food. Ian said it was better than he expected. Nina liked it too. Jan said that there is also a white cow and a minotaur. There were many monsters that looked like cows. The meat of a white cow is very similar to that of a green cow. She also has delicious milk. Minotaur meat is tasteless, so it's only an item. And the monster's axe is too heavy to use. Suddenly, Jink told Esther that he had raised the level of wind magic. He thought that now the guy would be able to make a wind tornado. Esther noticed it too and said it would help them all. Dzink said that its range is smaller than that of the cyclone. He had already said that they should go, when suddenly they noticed two people in the field. The man held his partner, who was covered in blood, and said that the exit was very close. Jink asked if they were okay. The man asked who they were and then said that it was better for them not to go there. Jink didn't understand what was going on. The man said that these are the ants that live there. They were unlucky and stumbled upon their group. The guy asked what was wrong with the others. The man said that only they managed to survive, while the rest remained in the anthill. Jink thought that he hadn't fought ants yet. He told the man that while he was using healing magic, they would tell him about the monsters. The man thanked him and said that there weren't that many of them, but they were lining up, so it was hard to beat them. Their weapon is claws and their acid is quite unpleasant. Jink asked about their weaknesses. The man said that their skin is durable, but they are afraid of fire. Jink thought that he was not very good with fire. They mostly use air and water magic. They were unlucky. The ants are desperately defending the queen. To pass the 24th floor, they will have to invite a lot of magicians with them and go with the clan. The injured man said he felt better and thanked the guys. They said they were leaving. They told the guys not to hope for success. Jan asked Jink what happened. The guy told them to go ahead. He was going to get through the 24th floor as soon as possible, but they shouldn't forget about security. They reached the 24th floor where there were many cows. Esther asked how much further to go. Jink said they were in the middle of the floor and the anthill was quite large. Suddenly, the carpet workers got scared and ran away. Jink felt the vibration. Nina paled and pointed to the side with her hand. There were a lot of ants chasing the adventurers. The girl with the staff tried to defend herself by attacking with magic. One of the ants died, but the other attacked the girl with acid, after which she screamed in pain. Jink wondered what they could do with the type of magic they had. There were more of them than he had expected. At least 5,000 ants. The children panicked and asked what was going on. Suddenly, Ian said that if they didn't save those people, they would be able to avoid death. Jink turned pale. The children asked what he was saying. Jink thought that Jan was right and the best solution was to run away. However, the children, especially Nina, won't stand the guilt if they don't save them. Jink shouted that they would fight. He said to use potions to even the odds. Everyone prepared for battle. Jink thought that their lives were his responsibility as a leader. He had to hold on so that everyone would survive. The adventurers who were running away told the guys to retreat. Jink said they would buy time and take the ants away. One of those adventurers said it was useless and then asked if they had any wizards. Jink exclaimed that if it got too hot, they would run away. The adventurers thanked the guy and ran away. Jink raised his arms and used a water cyclone, which supported Esther's air tornado. The ants scattered from the attacks of the guys. Yang and Nina also fought hard, but there were no fewer ants. Jink drank the potion, thinking that there were too many of them. Their weak point is fire, but he can't use it in such a situation. He still has enough mana and Yang to hold on, but the kids already need a break to recover. The guy called Esther and Nina into himself, and then created a wall of water around them. He told the guys not to worry about him and to drink potions and recover. He was thinking about what to do now. If he continued to fight at the same pace, they would die. In that case, the queen should have been killed. If they destroy the queen, they will win. It's big and it stands behind. He thought it was too far away and he had to get there somehow. If you look closely, there were individuals of a different shape. He noticed their commander. To do this, he decided to use orc meat. He pierced it with his sword, then threw it at the monsters. While they were distracted, he ran forward straight at the commander. The monster managed to release the acid, but after that, Jink cut the monster in two. He killed the general. At that moment, the ants began to panic. Jink was glad when he saw that they were scared. He called Jan to him. When the guy came, Jink said that using wind magic, he needed to scatter the meat of the orcs. If he can, then he needs to attack the commanders and use magic for ranged combat. Suddenly, Esther and Nina came out of the dome and said they also wanted to help. They decided to help Ian by opening his way to the queen with ranged magic. Jink said that as soon as he approached her, he would destroy her and they needed to cover for him. The guys accepted the order. Ian took out all the meat and started to launch it into the air. The ants were running towards the pieces of meat. Nina and Esther used an air cyclone to destroy the army. At this time, Ian was also fighting monsters. By this point, Jink had already gotten close to the queen and used the water cyclone. As soon as he was next to the huge queen, he stopped. The queen was several times bigger than Jink himself. The guy thought that although the queen's skills were not particularly strong, it was unlikely that his blade would be able to injure her enough. The queen threw out acid, which she tried to injure Jink, but he quickly bounced away from the attack. He used a fireball which he sent to the queen's head. As soon as the attack touched the queen, she screamed and then attacked Jinka. The guy quickly ran away from the attacks while she continued trying to injure him. Jink thought that her attacks were crude and it was quite easy to dodge them. However, he still didn't know how he could harm her. The problem was that he couldn't move any faster. Suddenly, he thought and realized that he could use Dan's tactics. A large body will not be able to rotate by a small diameter. He needed to move in a way that controlled her. At a fast pace, Jink began hitting the queen's legs, shattering her joints. Suddenly, some ants from the army started attacking the guy with acid. Jink was taken aback, after which he exclaimed that they should not bother him. Suddenly, a large number of these ants were blown away by an air cyclone. Ian restrained himself with magic and shouted to the children to keep the ants away from Jinka. The children accepted this order. Esther rushed into battle after these words. The guys were in a lot of tension because they didn't have much time and they were already running out of mana and potions. At this time, Jink once again used magic attacks to defeat the Ant Queen. She tried to attack the guy again, but he dodged with quick jerks. The queen tried to approach Dzink, but her legs began to crack, after which they completely fell apart. Jink exclaimed that the armor would no longer help her. At this time, Yang and the others were holding back the crowd of ants. The queen tried to attack Dzink with acid, but he dodged and told her not to resist. The guy moved fast enough, continuing to deliver quick and well-aimed blows at the queen. So he broke the horns on her head. Jink did this with the thought that if she lost consciousness and lost her legs, she definitely wouldn't be able to do anything. The queen screamed loudly. At that very moment, with a loud cry, Jink rushed to attack the queen, after which he successfully cut her armor into two parts and with it, she herself. The queen took her last breath, after which she hurriedly died. Noticing this, the army of ants panicked greatly. While the guys were still maintaining their defenses around her body, the ants began to disperse. The guys noticed that the ants started to run away. Nina turned around and said that it was after the queen was killed. Esther ran up to Dzink and said that his brother was doing well. Jink sighed and said he was glad that at least they weren't hurt. He thought that everything was fine this time, but if he had made even one mistake, then their bodies would have remained lying in the maze. He exclaimed that he had been careless, after which he apologized. Jan immediately stopped Jink and said he was glad they had survived. Esther said that in the end, it was still a success and they had a lot to lose. They confirmed this and decided to use wind magic to pack up all their belongings and return outside. Nina said it would be difficult to calculate everything. Esther said that since Jink had defeated the A-rank Ant Queen, he would most likely get temporary rank A. Jink thought about it and said he didn't know because it was too fast. It was true that he had defeated her, however, it was only one queen. Just a few days later, at the Adventure Guild, Hamel's branch, the guy was thinking that in the end, he might get a good lecture from the guild that he had risked the enchanter's life for nothing. Mona said that the guy was fighting with a group of ants. It is reported that Dink helped the B-rank adventurers from the harp. As a reward, he gives them 3 platinum coins. Jink estimated that it was 300,000 Japanese yen and then asked if it was too much. Mona said they were saved from evil monsters and all at a market price. This is the price of life, of course. The help itself was also important, and they realized that without Dzink they would have been killed. The guy said he understood and then thanked Mona for telling him. The girl said that people always die. She frowned and told Jin that he was a valuable enchanter, and she didn't want to receive the news of his death at all. The guy said nothing. Mona stood up and said that she was the one who asked him to save them. She apologized for risking him so much. Jink said that she didn't need to say it because he wanted to get there himself. He said it wasn't her fault at all. The girl came to the door and said that she would call the head of the guild. She opened the door and said that there were more people who wanted him to live than he could imagine. After these words, she went out and slammed the door. Nina said that Mona was angry. Jink noticed that she was seriously worried, and because of that, he was pleased. After that, Dan came into the room and addressed Mr. Enchanter. He said he heard that the guy showed the ants everything. He said that Jink overestimated himself and also put his friends in danger and saved people. He said that if Jink wanted to die so badly, then why not return to Rosalt? Esther jumped up and asked how dare Dan talk to his brother like that. He said he didn't care that he was the head of the guild. Jink stopped his brother, after which he said that Dan was right and he would be careful. Dan said it was ridiculous and then told Jink to think about his behavior. Notation alone is essential here. However, Dan had an important message for the guy today. Jink was surprised. Dan said that the guild head from Colt contacted him recently. The aristocrats of Rosalt came to Cole. The guy was surprised. Dan said that 4 people dressed as merchants came to ask for an escort, and they were able to find out that one of them was an aristocrat. They were given an adventurer and ordered to keep an eye on them. According to the information from the maintainer, it became known that they want to bring Dzink back. That's what King Rosalta wanted. Esther said they could want to, but they couldn't. Jink asked why Dan had told him. The man said that if it was legal, the guild would have maintained confidentiality, and it didn't matter who demanded it, but they turned themselves in. He said that it was necessary to do everything according to the law, and the guild always maintains neutrality in international conflicts. He said it was their problem. Jink thought he would have to tell the Stake King about this. He asked them their names. Dan said they didn't know the names yet, so he asked about Jink's guesses. Jink thought about it. He thought that if they wanted to make him crown prince, a royal delegation would come, but they infiltrated in secret. Suddenly he exclaimed that he had found out. It was the Marquis of Butanil, the second most important nobleman after the Governor-General. He is known for his harsh treatment of commoners. Dan said that fortunately, Butanil does not know that Jink is in Hamel, and now he is looking for a guy in the capital. Hearing this, Jink thought about writing a letter to Chris and the sacred tribe. He wondered about moving the servants from his house to the Brando mansion. Suddenly, Mona told Dzink that she had a question for him. The guy asked what kind of question it was. Mona stated that, as the members of the harp team said, they encountered the ants because they wanted to get away from the place where they were fighting, out of custody and messengers. She asked if this had hindered the guy's investigation. Jink thought about it and said that it didn't really hurt, but they also stopped mining when they saw the quarrel. After that, they moved on. Mona sighed and said that even an S-rank Jink suffers from this, let alone others. She asked if they wanted them to complain to the heads of both clans. Jink agreed, thinking at the same time that these clans were even hindering the guild. Suddenly, he heard Dan, with a frown on his face, thinking about out of custody. Jink wanted to ask Dan about it, but he stood up and exclaimed about how much trouble it was. He sighed and said that he was done with them, after which he pointed out to them not to take any more risks like that. Jink said nothing. At this time, a middle-aged man was drinking and shouting about who the fool the enchanter had complained about was. He said that if it was a weak clan, they could ignore them. But they couldn't do that to the S-rank. It was the home of the Messenger's clan. They exclaimed that he should be punished. There weren't many people in the 4th squad, and he couldn't order Harvard back. Harvard and the 3rd squad went to explore the maze, and they knew that if he found out about it, it would be bad for everyone. They came to the conclusion that something had to be done. They suggested telling the others to stay away from Jink. They decided that until Harvard returned, they should not have contacted out of custody. At this time in the clan house outside of custody, there was also a meeting. They said that the guild had complained about their clan and the messengers. They stirred because Dzink was interrupted. They didn't care about territories, but there were more important things. Suddenly, one of them said that the kingdom of Nadzar had ordered them to kill Dzink. Beyond confinement is a large adventurer clan located in Hamel. Their leaders from the neighboring Nadzar country sent scouts to the kingdom of Kal. They needed to kill the enchanter. It would have been difficult for Princess Melissa to bring her son-in-law to Nadzar since Elliot had banished Dzink. It will be difficult to drag the guy to Nadzar, and he will remain in a stake, and this is a big threat to their country. And before the danger from him increases, they have to kill the guy. Death awaited them for the failure of the mission. They asked who would go for it. Everyone knows the explorers of the labyrinth. That's why one of the men in the raincoat volunteered. He had heard that all enchanters were quite capable. If he is not an assassin of a certain class, then they will not be able to complete this mission. The man was told to disguise himself as a member of the messengers and continue the mission. Even if he makes a mistake, Jink will think it's one of the messengers. If the relationship between the messengers and the enchanter gets worse, it will harm the kingdom of Kal. He must be careful. A few days later, the guys gathered again. Ian said that thanks to the fight with the ants, they raised their levels. Ian's magic level has exceeded 100, and the level of radar de Jinka rose. Since he gave them enchanted items with skills, they proved to be very useful. Nina also turned 13 years old. She told Esther to call her big sister. Jink said that they have become stronger now and were able to pass the floor with the ants. They gathered on the 26th floor. They won't be bothered by ants anymore if they get to a safe place. The cold zone begins on the 26th floor. As Mona said, it's going to be cold. All inexperienced adventurers stop there and don't go any further. That's why Jink bought warm clothes. It was the first time Ian had worn such a thing. Esther asked if it was that cold. There are no special differences in the climate of Rosalta and Kola. There are no 4 seasons here, as the climate is temperate all year round. Jink knew what cold was, as he has memories of Jinkuro who lived in Japan. He said that this time he would not be mining for fossils or objects. Exploring a new floor is above all else. Together they defeated the monsters, ate and went forward. Quickly enough they arrived on the 26th floor, where Jink, like everyone else, was struck by the cold. He said that winter was nowhere near in Japan. If they stop, they will die from frostbite. They decided to stop the wind and raise the temperature. Jink created an air support and told the guys not to waste their energy, because there would be no time for long breaks in the dungeon with the boss. It's difficult, but we need to hurry. While they were hiding from the snowstorm, Ian suddenly noticed how tigers were approaching them from one side. The monsters were hungry. They rushed to attack the guys. Jink used water arrows to injure the monsters, and Ian attacked with an air cutter to finish them off completely. Yang said that due to the weather conditions, they probably won't be able to eat them, and it's hard to hunt in this cold. Zink's water arrow looked more like a sherbet. Nina asked what sherbet was. The guy thought that in this country they don't know about such confectionery products. Suddenly, he said that he had an idea that Nina would like. After a while, they came to the 30th floor, to the dungeon with the boss. It took them 2 days to improve their physical strength. The guy asked how the adventurers dealt with it. Suddenly, he pulled out a pile of metal left over from the alchemy he had used to create the golem. Esther was surprised. The golem picked up the snow and put it in the barrel. Esther asked what it was. Jink said he wanted to try something and they would find out about it later. It was warmer in the boss's dungeon and they didn't need winter clothes. Suddenly, Akrakanto appeared in front of them. Jink told everyone to be careful because he bites. If he eats them, they will die instantly. He's hard to beat because it's hard to land direct punches. They needed to avoid him and attack with magic. The monster tried to attack them when suddenly Jink used an air cyclone. He enhanced the magic even though it took a while. Jink used a water tornado. He thought that if it didn't work, he would have to blind him with an arrow. The 4 of us using magic should work. Suddenly, the monster fell and started coughing up blood. Jink was taken aback. That's how the monster died. Ian said it was unexpected, but they were able to win. Jink said that although he didn't have any special skills, however, because of his stats, he thought it would be more difficult. Esther said that the power of magic varies, and when his level increases, so does the enchantment skill. Jink thought that this ability was stronger than ever. The guys got up too. He said that there would be a safe zone next and they would finally rest. A lot of people were camping in this area. Jink thought they had killed someone. Judging by their appearance, they are either from the messengers or out of custody. Suddenly, someone started shouting the guy's name. A guy approached Dzink and said that he was a lion from the big tree. The guy was feeding them orc stew. Jink recognized him. Lin wondered where they would go because it's hard to rest next to those 2 clans. When the guys had prepared a meal, Jink offered the big tree something to eat. It was the milk of a white cow. The guys agreed. The children only drank milk and immediately fell asleep. They were tired. Even adults can't stand the cold zone. The guy asked how long Lion was there. He said that they, the 3rd squad, supply the 1st and 2nd and also communicate with the surface. They couldn't just leave. There were 3 other squads of other clans stationed there. They provided support to the 1st and 2nd squads on the lower floors. Jink thought that sometimes they stay there for up to a month. He assumed they stank. He said he understood what the guy was thinking. Lion said there was nothing to do because drinking water was extremely important, so they couldn't wash themselves with it. Jink said he could trade it for information about the lower floors. From the 31st to the 35th floor, there is a tropical jungle zone. According to Lion, many adventurers are cut off in the cold zone. From now on, even the guilds don't know much about what's going on. They say it's because one clan wants to sell information about this territory. Jink thought that if they made a map and a guide to the jungle territories, they could earn money. He handed over the water and thanked Lion. The guy wished Zink good luck. At that time, someone was looking at the guy. On the 31st floor, the boys encountered a jungle. They were different from the cold zone. It was hot and humid. Their goal is to explore the area, gather information, and make a map. If you sell this information to the guild, you can earn money. He didn't think it was difficult and told them to try. Nina said she would have been happy, but it was too hot. Jink agreed and took out a barrel of snow. From there, he took out a special white cow milk sherbet from Zink. The guys asked what it was. The guy reminded Nina of her words that she wanted to know what sherbet was. He secretly prepared it in the safe zone. Nina tried it and said it was delicious. Jan liked it too. Zink said that for cooking you need to add sugar to the milk and cool it. The milk is saturated, so cream is not needed. Ian said that the guy could sell such a previously unseen dish. Jink said it was a common meal in that world. Esther asked about it, but Jink said he had read it in the library. He also figured out how to cool them down. You need to wrap the jelly slime in a cloth. If you put it in your pocket or on your head, it will get cooler. Ian began to think about how much it would cost. They were going to go, but they had to stick together. The boys looked at the jungle together. Suddenly, Jan stopped Zink. Two people were cursing in front of them. They were talking about the mission to kill Jink. The king and the princess also want to kill him as soon as possible. Jink wondered if this was the former Queen Rosalta. Suddenly, he heard that all the rumors about Jink might be true, and these were the words of the guild leader. Ian looked at the guy. The head of the guild was Dan. The guys were talking about how they wanted to kill Zink. The guy didn't think that the whole clan were spies, but some might have followed them into the maze. Nina said that Dan might be a traitor. Jink told them not to let the clan know that they were aware of the assassination attempt. The guy said that Jan and Esther understood, but Nina was easy to read. The girl said it was rude and you could rely on her. Upon returning, Mona was shocked that out of custody, Nadzar's scouts. Dan exclaimed that for 10 years he had not understood. The guys were silent. Jink asked what they would do. If Nadzar is involved, then the guy wanted to inform the Stake King. Dan said that if Nadzar wanted to fall, he would not let it go. Dan said that what out of custody, spies are not the only reason to get rid of them. He had said earlier that the guild was neutral, so it had to be left to the state and they would catch the killers. Dan said he would go into the maze with them. They needed something more to defeat the clan. It was necessary to catch them in the act and Dan would be a witness. Jink thought that Dan wanted to catch them, but this was an opportunity for him to deal with the rest of the guilds. He agreed to go with Dan. Esther jumped up and asked if Dan really didn't know anything. The man confirmed this and said that beyond the conclusion are good. Esther said they would go together, but Dan would take his own food. The man asked if Esther trusted him. He said that he had been the head of the guild for a long time. He said he would try not to interfere. They decided to leave tomorrow, after which Dan left. He remembered how his brother had told him that he had joined the out of custody. It was a big clan, and his brother also invited Dan along. The man wanted to be like a brother. At this time, Jink finished his letter to the king. He took out the truth serum from the drawer. The medicine of the Nonland family. He took some with him before his exile. He wondered if this day had really come. He should do this as an aristocrat, but Jinkuro's feelings prevented him. The lives of Esther and the others depended on it. The next day, everyone was there. There are usually a lot of people there at this time, but thanks to Dan, they were able to get through. The man covered himself with rags and said that he needed to disguise himself as he might be recognized. Jink said that if he had worn a wig, it would have been better. The guy gave Dan a bracelet, which he enchanted for physical strength. Ian asked if the guy was sure because he was given a rank, and this would increase his level even more. Jink said to go all together, he had to do it. He was watching Dan, even so they were stronger. When Dan was ready, they went to the 15th floor. Already on the 14th floor, Dan was tired. He asked if they always went through the maze at this pace. The guys confirmed it. Jink recalled that Dan had said that they would meet that clan next. Dan asked them not to rush because he is already over 40 years old. Jink said it was time to make a stop. Dan happily ate everything and told Nina that it was very tasty. Suddenly, Jink asked if Dan liked surprises. The man asked if God had come down to give him a surprise. Jink said bluntly that it was a truth serum used by the Nonland family. He took it to use on the members of that clan, and he didn't know how effective it was. Jink hands the bottle to the man who was sitting on the ground and explained that the serum needed to be mixed with water. He claims that when they drink the serum, Jink will challenge the man. At this moment, a brother and a young man turn to Zink. Jink is going to talk until they've all had a drink. He talks about the side effects and mentions that he has a concentrated serum, and the hero does not know how much it needs to be diluted. He wants to experiment so that he doesn't make a mistake in the quantity. A short guy tries to stop Jink and the man. He claims that if Jink drinks the wrong dose, he will feel bad. His brother says that Jink and the man have an antidote, so they can move away from the effect of the serum. Jink says this will be the first time he will drink the serum. He claims that if the man wins, then Jink will give him 1 platinum coin and he will be able to eat the same food with them. The man looks at Jink and asks if he is sure. He says it's a serious act, not a toy. Jink looks at the man seriously and reminds him that he is the guild leader. He knows that the man has something to do with out of custody. He says they don't know much and can't trust the guild leader. That's why he wants to find out immediately. The man finally understands what the guy is up to. He asks if Jink really believes that he has something to do with out of custody. The guy understands that this is rude, but he confirms that he thinks so. That's why he decided to take the risk. He asks if the guild leader agrees. The man agrees. He immediately points at himself and demands that Jink not underestimate him. He is confident that he can drink anything. Everyone is watching as Jink sets up various containers on the ground. He does this right in front of the guild leader and then pours the serum. Jink picks up the cup, drinks the contents, and opens his eyes wide. He hears voices saying unpleasant things to him. Jink abruptly puts the cup on the ground and begins to clear his throat. The guild leader was watching him. In turn, he also picks up the cup and drinks the contents. The guild leader also opens his eyes wide and then clutches his stomach with his hand. The man begins to groan. He chuckles and asks if Jink wants to drink more serum. Jink picks up the cup of whey again and continues drinking. The man repeats after the guy. At some point, he felt very unwell. The man was standing in the water. He wondered where he got to. Suddenly, the water began to envelop the man's legs. The man heard a voice that addressed him as a brother. He asked why the man didn't stop him. The man didn't understand what was going on. He stared in horror at how the water enveloped his entire body and wouldn't let him move. The voice got louder. He started screaming that he had died because of him. A terrifying grimace of an unknown creature appeared. He remembers his brother and realizes that he should have stopped him, but he couldn't, because his brother was very happy to be a participant in out of custody. The man was sorry to part with him, but he was very happy for his brother who realized his dream. However, after a long time they met again and his brother was very disappointed. The man should have told him not to overdo it. The man found out about the death of his brother due to an accident while exploring the maze. Talented people from the stake who are out of custody often go missing. He did not believe it, but Jink convinced him that the people from Nadzar had acted very cruelly. He watched the formation of a large clan. Even after becoming the head of the guild, he couldn't get any closer to solving the mystery. He couldn't treat the out of custody and the aristocrats the same way as before, as he found out about their crimes and decided he wouldn't run away anymore. The man couldn't let them kill him. He was going to protect Jink and his friends. At this moment, the man opens his eyes and tries to catch his breath. At that time, Dink and his friends were watching him. The man gets up from the ground and asks if he really lost consciousness. He asks if he did anything stupid under the serum. Jink bows his head and apologizes to Dan. He says he did something stupid. His friend will also apologize, remembering his terrible treatment. He says he will accept any punishment. Dan grins and says the guy doesn't have to worry. He claims that it's his own fault for withholding information about being out of custody. One of Zink's friends says that the theory that Dan and outside of prison are in cahoots turned out to be incorrect. Dan gets up from the ground and says he doesn't know anything about it. He thinks that someone has been involved with out of custody in the past and is aware of something. They ask Dan what happened. Dan talks about how 5 years ago, a participant in out of prison passed a rank enhancement test. The man didn't want to admit it, but he left him with a big scar during the test. The man still remembered his crazy smile. Until that moment, he hadn't thought it could be related in any way. Jink says they have no choice. He convinces everyone that they need to find the killer and find out everything. The guy was remembering the gift of empathy. This is a rare ability that can be used on an opponent who has been severely injured in the past. This is very energy intensive, but it allows you to interact with the thoughts and feelings of the enemy, and also with information about him. At the same time, a loud scream was heard in the jungle area. The man clutched his head and screamed, demanding to stop. One of his partners came up to him and asked what happened. Immediately, a third member of their team came up and asked the same question. The partner with the tousled hair says that the man is behaving as usual. He claims that the man tried to get into the head of the guild leader. The third partner asks what it means. The man asked if anyone had actually found out that they were using empathy. His friend does not believe this and then asks how such a thing could happen. The man says he doesn't know. The third partner assumes that the guild leader attacked mentally and asks if anyone could have found out about their plan to kill Jink. He claims that an emergency has occurred. The man demands that all the killers in the maze be collected. He says they have to deal with Jink. The man demands that the mercenary calm down their partner. The mercenary says it's difficult to do. The man speaks negatively about Jinka and then asks how his squad could immediately attack them. Suddenly, the comrades hear some loud noises. They look up and see wyverns flying towards them. One of the mercenaries is swearing. A mercenary with tousled hair approaches their partner who was attacked and demands that he get up. The partner pushed the man away and shouted at them not to approach him. The wyverns began to roar furiously and fly towards the mercenary squad who were trying to deal with the difficult situation. The man points to their partner and says that they need to leave him as they have no other choice. His friend asks if they will leave him just like that. He says that Jay has the important gift of empathy and they won't be able to steal information from the guild. The hooded mercenary raises his voice and says that the opponents would have dealt with Jay anyway. He asks if a man is really willing to take risks for one person. A mercenary with tousled hair is trying to make a difficult decision. He swears, hesitantly looking at Jay, and then decides to leave him anyway. Finally, he apologizes to his friend. Jay continues to sit on the ground and cry. At that moment, a wyvern flies up to him. The monster grabs him with its mouth. All the other mercenaries were running, hoping to hide somewhere from the monsters. At that moment, the hooded mercenary was swearing and speaking negatively about Jinka. He makes a promise to himself. The man decides by all means to get Dink. Dink sneezes. He says it's very cold on the 26th floor. Then one of his partners says that they will go as always. Dan shivers and says he is very cold. The man demands that Jink summon the monster as soon as possible. Jink rubs his chin and asks what it means. Dan asks if the guy really doesn't understand him. Dan tells us that when traveling through cold zones, you can summon a monster that is resistant to cold and can pull a sled. Dan thinks the most sensible idea would be to summon a fiery monster like a salamander. Dink says he's exhausted because the instructions don't say so. They don't have someone who can summon a monster. Dan asks how they got past this floor last time. Jink wants to make an air curtain and says to take lanterns for heating. Jink holds up his index finger and says that their physical strength and fire can handle the rest. Dan asks if the guy is serious. He thinks that the guy is saying and doing all this on purpose. Jink uses fire magic and a flame lights up in his hand. The guy says that his fire magic level has recently increased. He claims that he's getting better at it. The guy does various manipulations with fire and then says that it is not so difficult to create heat inside the air curtain. Dan adjusts his mask and says that since there is no other choice, they can only do this. Jink says it's okay. He wonders if Dan has improved compared to yesterday. He says to focus on maintaining the magic and Dan will have to look around. On the 30th floor, the squad met with the dungeon boss. The squad struck Tokurakant. At some point, the monster took a lot of damage and fell to the ground, no longer moving. Dan smiles and says that Tokurakanta was easy to defeat. Dink suggests a rest stop and says they need to discuss their future strategy. Dan asks what it means. He wonders why they don't go to the safe zone. He is not afraid of meeting with outside the prison, but he is worried about the local smell. Jink says that the monster will be reborn in an hour. Jink believes that if he does it sooner, then experience points and a drop will not be superfluous. Dan smiles and understands the strategy of Dink and his squad. After some time, a girl from the Dink squad reports that she has prepared white cow's milk and sherbet. Zink's brother turns to Dan and says that if a man wants, he can eat his portion. Dan asks if he really hasn't finished eating yet. He says you shouldn't worry about him. Dan reminds him that he needs to eat as he is still growing. Dan then asks what their squad's plan is. Jink says they will pretend to explore the tropical floor and lure them out of confinement. He had already explored it, and he wondered if he could use the local area. Zink warns that because of the trees in this place, visibility is poor, plus the enemies can't see anything either. The guy decides that if they improve their radar skill, they will be in a winning position. Dan says they need to be on the lookout. Dan assumes that even the guild doesn't know everything about this place. He doesn't know what skills they have, but he knows that out of custody are good at surveillance and intelligence. Jink understands that they are wanted. He thinks it's a test of mental and physical strength. Jink moves forward and says they need to go. He informs them that they are going to a safe zone. The guy goes ahead and says that, as before, they will act stealthily. When the squad passed by other participants of the dungeon, everyone is watching them, including the mercenaries from outside the prison. On the 7th day, the entire squad descended to the tropical floor. Jink and his teammates decided to take the opportunity to take a dip in the tub while everything was calm. The girl was glad to refresh herself. Dan approaches Jink's brother and says that you can put a bathtub and other things in the storage. He says that otherwise they would be dirty now. The guy replies that this is exactly what his brother took the bathroom for. The guy with the long hair turned his head to the side and assumed that out of custody would not come to this floor. He thinks they couldn't have cancelled the plan to attack Jink and his squad. Jink says that there is a possibility of their attack. He hasn't been distracted in a week, so he doesn't feel like himself anymore. But thanks to his vigilance, the level of radar increased. The guy looks at his hand and decides to check. He puts on all kinds of jewelry. Dan approaches the guy and asks what he is doing. Dink claims that he can detect anything within a large radius. While he was using this skill, he was unarmed, so he asked Dan to stay with him. The man says he understands everything. Jink closes his eyes and starts using the skill. All his senses are heightened. He begins to see and feel. The hero senses the location of living beings and their mental state. He warns about people from outside the prison. He says they've blocked the squad's passage. He notices that the people they saw before are not on this floor. Jink claims that they are on a mission, as the plan is still in action. Dan suggests that they are being eavesdropped on outside of detention. Jink replies that they need the skill of hearing for this. The opponents have not yet realized that they have given themselves away and are in no hurry. Jink smiles and says they can say bad things about Nadzar to test this theory. Dan chuckles and says it's a good idea. After that, Dink and his squad checked again and found out that the mercenaries from outside of detention were watching them with their eyes, not their ears. Suddenly, Jink opens his eyes wide and looks away. Nina comes up to him and asks what happened. Jink responds by saying that the mercenaries from out of custody have an increased thirst for murder. Jink becomes more serious and says that they will do everything according to his plan. He claims that the mercenaries from outside the prison keep their distance and follow them. Jink thinks they can beat them. He says that in this case, he can become a bait for them. His partner approaches Dzink and says that he and Nina will pretend to be in love. That's how they'll catch them. My brother asks if it's dangerous. Jink claims that if the others hide in the shelter, then everything will be fine. Jink claims that if Nina raises her level, she will become stronger than Dan. Dan doesn't want to admit it, but he understands that it's true. He says it's all thanks to his enchantment. We need to hold out a bit until help arrives. Jink begins to explain their squad's strategy. Jink urges his brother Esther to act faster. Esther obeys her brother and pours water, pretending that they are practicing water magic. Dink decided that this water would contain a substance developed by the Nonland family. It was a poison that, when vaporized, releases a gas that reduces thinking abilities. The entire squad had drunk the antidote beforehand. Esther tells her brother that they will go ahead. Jink agrees. He says that he and Nina will cook a meal. Jink realizes that the substance has a slight odor. To kill the smell, Nina starts cooking. They want to spread the smell of food with wind magic. Jink understood that all they had to do was wait for the mercenaries to appear. The guy turned to Nina because he noticed something strange in her behavior. Nina says she is scared because people from outside of detention are trying to attack them. She wasn't prepared for the fact that she would have to do something beyond her principles to protect the squad. Jink understood that fighting a monster and fighting a human was perceived differently. Dink took into account that he belonged to an aristocratic family, but Nina was a girl from the village. Jink smiles and says that their goal at the moment is to capture the mercenaries alive. He asks the girl to leave the battle to him. Then the guy asks the girl to just defend herself. The girl turns to her master. Nina thanks Jink and says she will try her best too. Then Jink smiles and says it's time. He says they should do it. After a while, Nina, blushing, holds out a spoonful of food to Jink and asks him to taste the dish. Jink tastes the dish and then hugs Nina and says that Nina, as always, has prepared a very delicious dinner. He claims that he would like to marry a girl right now. Nina pretends to be embarrassed. The rest of the squad is watching the scene that Nina and Jink are playing out. The guys laugh, and Dan asks what they're doing. One of the guys says he uses radar to know the approach of the mercenaries from outside the prison. The guy says that not everyone can eat delicious food and take a bath. He thinks that they were out of custody in the jungle with bad food for several days. The guy also suggests that they haven't seen women for a long time. The guy notices that Dzink has been noticed outside the prison. He reports that mercenaries are approaching them. He mentions that the mercenaries are full of anger, hunger, and envy. Esther says that because he spilled the water with the substances, they began to think hard. It's good for the heroes. However, Dzink's brother thinks that he and Nina are overdoing it. Dan is proud of the idea and says that the mercenaries should suffer. Nina notices that Jink has sauce on her face and wipes it with a handkerchief. Jink approaches the girl and informs her that the mercenaries are already very close. Jink's partner stands up, revealing his location, and says that there must be a killer among the mercenaries. He argues that they should attack the opponents from the rear. Dan gives the command to move forward. The mercenaries approach and notice the dink. One of them immediately speaks negatively about the guy. A mercenary with an eye patch demands that Jink stop showing off. He says they will take his food and his woman. The mercenaries begin to surround Jink and Nina. They say this is the end for Jink. At this moment, Dink and Nina get into a fighting stance. The mercenaries are happy to finally deal with the guy. One of them is happy that they are finally leaving the jungle. Jink puts on the enchanted accessories and thinks that Esther and the others have not noticed the attack of the mercenaries yet. One of the mercenaries points at Nina and demands that the others not touch her, as she could still be useful to them. One of the guys licks his lips and says that if you look closely, Jink has a pretty face too. He's already making plans for Jink. The guy is startled at this moment. He believes that the mercenaries have completely lost their minds because of the poison. All the mercenaries rushed forward to attack Nina and Jink. Jink covered the girl with himself. He then lunged forward and stabbed one of the mercenaries. The guy thinks that it's too late to fix something. At this moment, one of the mercenaries viciously attacks the young man from behind. Jink turns around abruptly and blocks the mercenary's punch. The guy conjures a fireball in his hand and sends it towards the mercenary. Another mercenary runs up to Jink and is about to attack him. He swings his sword. At that moment, Jink jumps up. He glares at the man. The hero immediately lands on him and kicks him. Nina jumped and attacked one of the mercenaries. She struck the mercenary in the leg, causing him to scream in pain. The girl was determined. She was about to throw another punch, but she was suddenly grabbed from behind. The girl screamed. Jink turned around and cried out in alarm. He saw one of the mercenaries immobilize Nina. The girl's eyes widened. The mercenary approached the girl's face and demanded that she not resist. He says she needs to be punished. He tells her that the girl should blame Jink for everything. He's going to have some fun with the prisoner before he deals with her. Jink was already moving towards the mercenary to push him off the girl, but Nina glared at the man at that moment and shouted at Jink not to worry about her. Nina hits a man, which makes him scream in pain, and then she pushes him off her. The girl swears at him. The man falls to the ground and does not get up. Nina is disgusted by the smell at this moment. She speaks negatively about a man. Another mercenary appears behind the girl, who is about to stab her with a sword. The girl turns abruptly and launches a water balloon at the man. The man begins to clear his throat. The girl grabs him by the hair. The heroine knocks him in the face with her knee. She screams at the mercenaries not to approach her. Jink looks at the girl and is amazed that she can scare him so much. She fought fiercely with the rest of the mercenaries. A mercenary with an eye patch screams that Jink and Nina are just two children. He curses and asks why the mercenaries are taking so long to deal with them. The man does not notice the guy behind his back, who strikes him right on the head. At that moment, Dan and Esther run out of the bushes. Dan shouts for the mercenaries to prepare for the fact that they will be attacked. The mercenaries are amazed that Jink and Nina had backup all this time. The Jink squad was able to surround the mercenaries. Esther struck with his spear, defeating several opponents at once. Meanwhile, Dan was striking with his swords. The mercenaries fell to the ground and screamed in pain. Dan smiles and is happy that his body has become very light thanks to Jink. Heroes defeat their enemies. His partner asks about Zink's condition and he says he's fine. The hero thanks the squad for their support and wants to interrogate the mercenaries. Nina doesn't want to touch them. Jink apologizes for leaving her in the fight. After a while, Esther approaches her brother and asks where Nina went. He says Nina and Ian will set up camp. Nina left because she wanted to wash off the dirt after the men. Dan understands the feelings of a young maiden. Jink says it's time to deal with the mercenaries. Jink looks at the bound mercenaries and says he has a lot of questions for them. He claims that if they answer honestly, they will get off lightly. He says it will be no hassle since he doesn't want to touch them. Jink approaches the blindfolded mercenary and says that he needs to drink the truth serum in order to make it easier for them all. The man spits out the serum. Jink glares at the mercenary. The man smiles and speaks negatively about the guy. Esther abruptly approaches the mercenary and plunges her spear into his knee. The man starts screaming in pain. Esther says that the mercenary is taciturn. He asks his brother what they will do with him. He assumes that they can rip off his fingers one by one. Esther thrusts the spear harder into the man's knee and says that if you need to get him to talk, you can only leave your tongue. He offers to do something with his eye. All the mercenaries are indignantly looking at Esther and what he is doing to their leader. They're shouting at them not to do it. Jink clears his throat. The guy says that the mercenaries are dealing with the Nonland family. He tells us that they have been taught to torture since childhood. He says they know how to hurt a person so that they don't die too quickly. Jink glares at the mercenary leader again and demands that he answer how many there are. The mercenary remains silent. Jink turns around and walks towards the other mercenaries. He says there's nothing you can do about it. Jink grabs the head of one of the mercenaries. The mercenary screams for the guy to let him go. He's trying to figure out what Jink is going to do. The guy uses his fire magic. He's going to gradually increase the heat. The mercenary asks to let go of his head. Jink says that the skin is thin, so soon the man's skull will start to heat up and his face will be burned. He says there are many more ways to deal with them. Jink looks at the others and says that while hunting monsters, they easily take their lives. He says he doesn't see the difference between them and the mercenaries. The guy becomes more formidable and says that if it is necessary to deal with the mercenaries, he will do it. The mercenaries looked at the guy in shock. The mercenary, whose head was under Jink's hand, shouted for him to let go as the man was ready to tell everything. Jink releases the man and gives him the floor. The guy thinks about what he would have done if it had been Jink and decides that it's better for Nina not to see it. One of the mercenaries shouts at Dzink. He says that the exit from the maze is guarded outside the prison, so the guy and his squad cannot escape. Dan asks about the exit from the maze. He decides to tell the mercenaries everything since they didn't know. Dan says that the mercenaries have become traitors to the guild. He claims that the ambassadors of the exit from the labyrinth will judge them, and he assures them that their clan will be destroyed. Dan becomes more serious and says that all the mercenaries will be tortured and then executed. At best, they will be made slaves like criminals. Dan examines the mercenaries and says that he will be a witness in court, so it's better for them to keep quiet. Dzink suggests that the mercenaries lack the spirit and courage to act for the good of the Nadzar country. The guy found out that the items obtained in the maze were sold in bulk in Nadzar. It was much worse than Jink had expected. One of the mercenaries told how they used the gift of sympathy to search and take information about the guild in Dan's head. They were sinking into his mind. It's all very ironic. He grins at the fact that Dan himself gave them information about the guild and its plans. He says that because of Dan's mental attack, one of his comrades went crazy and had to be abandoned. He wonders how this could happen. Jin wants to understand if the mercenary could have somehow mentally burdened himself and gone crazy because of this. He suggests that the truth serum has some effect on the mental attack. Dan asks if one of the mercenaries really got hurt because of something like that. He says it doesn't matter anymore. Dan swings at the prisoner and asks if it's all his fault. Suddenly, Dan slaps himself in the face. Jink shouts at Dan to stop hurting himself. Jink holds Dan's hand and says that he is too relaxed. Then he says it's already over. He says they only have to judge the mercenaries. Dan tries to catch his breath and apologize. Jink lets him go and says that if they take the mercenaries to the surface, then everyone will know the truth. He is confident that in this case, the out of custody will come to an end as information will leak. Dan agrees with him and expresses hope. Then he asks how they can get the mercenaries to the surface. He asks if they will whip them. Jink smiles and says they'll figure something out. At the same time, voices could be heard on another floor. The black-cloaked squad dealt with the monsters that were trying to attack them. The man says that 2 hours will pass in 10 seconds. The whole squad got into a fighting stance and prepared. Another wyvern appears. The squad uses magic and directs it directly at the monster. The monster falls to the ground after being defeated. The squad leader smiles and wonders if the guys from the second squad have really been caught. With the gift of divination, he is not afraid of the enchanter. The stone golems were carrying cages of mercenaries from outside the prison. Dan walks next to Jink and says that he finally understood how the guy wanted to use golems. Jink decided to make 2 prisons which the golems would carry in order to separate those who told everything at once and who rebelled during the interrogation. The conditions of detention were different. The second thing the squad added to the drink was the Nonland family's medicine to keep their heads from spinning. In this way, Dink wanted some to envy those who were in better conditions. The team was destroyed as the mercenaries started cursing. Jan smiles and says that Jink has thought of everything perfectly. Jink looks at the mercenaries and notices that their squad consists mainly of rank members. He claims that if he hadn't done this, they might have had problems. Jink also thought about the toilet moment. It was difficult for the main character, but he gave them underwear with storage. The guy gave it the name a diaper of another dimension. It started to smell bad, so they had to use an air curtain. It was quite troublesome. Esther points out that his brother is special. He claims that he couldn't come up with something like that. Jink smiles and says that it's impossible to do this without a lot of mana. He reminds his squad that he still needs to support the golems. Esther approaches her brother and says that he should learn from him how to torture bad people. Dan waves his hand and says that this is not worth learning. Jink agrees with the man. Jan suddenly feels something. He turns to Jink. Jink immediately replies that he also felt something strange. The guy claims that a huge number of people are approaching them with a strong desire to kill. He knows that this is the first squad. Dan looks at Dzink and asks what their strategy will be this time and what he should do. Dink listened to the prisoners and concluded that the most problematic in the first squad were the leader Phobos and Neville. They will definitely win if they can defeat these two. Jin says that Neville is a support member of the team. He is more suited to the second squad in strength, but he has the ability to evaluate just like him. The hero decides that they shouldn't worry, as they have to defeat him before he finds out their stats. Then he talks about the leader of the first squad, Phobos. He says that Phobos can spend all his mana in a few seconds, but anticipate the future. The guy does not forget to tell that, using prediction, Phobos can approach the S rank. The first squad can attack from afar. That's why Jink decides that they need to use their water magic to the fullest. He distributes the roles. Jink suggests defeating the magician quickly and then hands over the glasses and says that they are enchanted for evaluation. The first group march through the thickets of the tropical forest. Phobos notices Dan and starts taunting him. He asks if the guild, which is supposed to stay away, really supports the caster. Dan says that the second squad told him everything. Jink says that the first squad will be finished if they don't surrender. He promises to ease the torments of those who will cooperate and casts a spell. Everyone freezes in anticipation of something terrible. Then Phobos smooths his hair. He thought he would get out of the maze and live in peace. Then his voice becomes more menacing and he says that this is the end of him. Jink opens his eyes wide and uses water magic. He launches a huge wave into the first squad. Many members of the first squad do not have time to react, so they are carried away by the wave. After the wave has passed, the entire first squad tries to get up from the ground. Neville curses and tries to get up too. Jink immediately attacks him with an air cutter and incapacitates him. The members of the first squad angrily shout at Dink. Phobos wipes his face and says he could have predicted it, but it was all too sudden. Phobos raises his sword and points it forward, ordering the first squad to attack Jink and his companions. Phobos screams that they have two goals, the head of the guild and the children. Dan and Yang run forward, the man screams. Then he and Ian start attacking the people of the first squad. Jink shouted Phobos' name and swung his sword to attack him. Phobos dodges all the punches. Then Jink launches a water balloon at him, but the man manages to dodge. Phobos smiled and shouted that the guy couldn't hit him. Then he stabs Jinka. He understands that Phobos predicts his attacks. Dink remembers the words of the second squad that Phobos is bad at fencing. He decides to exhaust Phobos, but remembers Esther and Nina camping nearby. The first squad stood in front of Nina and Esther, watching them. Nina and Esther were waiting for the attack. The first squad watched them angrily and then began to move forward. But because of the water on the ground, the entire first squad began to fall. Wet mercenaries cannot get up from the ground and flounder helplessly in the water. Phobos looks at the first squad and wonders what is happening to them. Jink smiles and rejoices that their plan has succeeded. The guy used jelly made from boiled slime. He sprayed it during a big wave. One of the mercenaries screams that this is unfair. Esther notices that the one who wanted to attack his brother is talking about this. Esther starts attacking the first squad with an air cutter, and Nina was raising her sword and summoning an air cyclone. Dan and Yang grab the mercenaries, putting their faces on the ground. Dan smiles and informs Jink that they are done. Jink continues to fight Phobos. At one point, he asks Phobos what happened. He asks if the guy would help his friends. Phobos continues to block Dzink's punches. He understands that if he turns away, Jink will end him. He was trying to figure out how he could use divination to win the fight. Phobos was surrounded. He froze and began to look around. Dink asks Phobos to use prediction. He asks what the man sees in the future. Phobos drops his sword, kneels down and puts his hands behind his head. He chuckles and says he's giving up. The second squad begs for mercy and is ready to give any information. They couldn't believe that Phobos had given up so easily. Esther says that they already have enough prisoners and witnesses and asks for permission to tie them to a tree. Jink says they'll need them again. He turns to Phobos and says that they will prepare the best cage for him. He is put in a cage which is lifted by a stone golem. He says that only Phobos will be given warm clothes in case of cold weather. Phobos hesitantly thanks Dzink. Dink continues and says he will give Phobos some water. He says Phobos can drink as much as he wants. Phobos chuckles and says you shouldn't worry about him. The mercenaries in the cages are swearing at Phobos. The squad and the stone golems were walking through the forest. Jan informs them that they will arrive at the safe zone soon. He turns to Jink and asks how they will explain this to the other clans. Jink asks if they should just tell it like it is. He says that even if there are still scouts on the 30th floor, there is still a chance that they will collide. Jink says that's why they have to show everyone that this is how it should be. He suggests that they can make friends with other clans. Dan says he will explain everything to them. He is confident that if he tells about what happened, they will believe him as the head of the guild. Jink thanks him, and then he turns to the rest of the squad and suggests not to provoke the other clans. Jink meets Leon, who smiles and asks what happened. Jink gets embarrassed and awkwardly rubs the back of his head. The young man says that they haven't seen Leon for a long time. He claims that it takes him a long time to talk about what happened. Dan approaches Leon and says he will explain everything. Leon immediately recognizes the guild leader. Dan tells us that they hunted Dzink outside of prison. Leon is surprised and asks what it means. Dan tells us that they had to do this because they are mercenaries and the main criminals are the perpetrators. The mercenaries watch the dialogue between Dan and Leon, cursing, and wondering what they should do now. Phobos stares at Leon intently and then opens his eyes wide. He notices a man from the third squad. He realizes that one of them has disappeared among the other clans. Phobos knows that they can't let Jin go any further. He believes that this is their last chance and begins to think about what he will do when he is free. Dink turns around and looks at Phobos. He is surprised. He's staring at the guy intently. He tells Jink to take his time. Jink asks what's going on with Phobos. Phobos is trying to say something else. Jink interrupts him and shouts at him that if he does, they will all die. Then, in a panic, he asks if the guy is really using prediction. Phobos speaks negatively about Dink. Leon's squad is then attacked by mercenaries from the third squad, shouting that all witnesses will turn to ashes. The third squad, who is hiding among Leon's squad, attacks the adventurers and screams for the witnesses to burn. The adventurers screamed in pain. Jink uses water magic and creates a wall of water to protect himself from fire. The man from the third squad is madly shouting that everything happened because of Jink. He shouted that the guy had destroyed his honor outside of prison. Jink looks at the man and thinks that he is abnormal, since he burned his comrades and the participants of the big tree. The man continued to scream. At that moment, Jink approached him and delivered a cutting blow. The man's eyes rolled back in his head. He fell to the ground. Dan gives the command for the squads to catch the rest of the out of custody. The squad immediately began to capture the mercenaries. He asks how they dare and orders them to kill those who resist. Jink screams at Jan to heal Leon, who was lying on the ground. Jan ran towards Jink, shouting to Esther and Nina to help him. Jink looks at Leon intently and realizes that he was too naive. He hadn't thought about what a desperate man was capable of. If he had foreseen this, then the big tree would not have been affected. A battle is unfolding. Mercenaries run up to Dan, who asks the man to wait. They try to convince him that although they are out of custody, they did not know about the murder. They ask the hero to believe them. Dan suggests that they were used for their own purposes. Dan says that if they don't want to be blamed, then they should help bring the others back up. He asks them to refrain from going into the maze for a while. Dan says that instead they should just complete quests in which you need to go to the maze. He talks about cheap jobs, disassembly, and cleaning. The man says they didn't have any money. The mercenaries apologize and thank you for the treatment with magic and potions. Leon approaches Jink and says that they are adventurers who can protect themselves. He says they relaxed at the most inopportune moment. Dan apologizes and says that he wants everyone who was injured to return to the surface and become a witness. Leon says he will help. He cannot forgive outside of prison. He asks what they wanted to do with the stake. Dan turns around, looks at the captured mercenaries and says that their sins have become even heavier. He wonders what kind of reprimand they'll get. The man remembers that they stole information from them and understands that this will have consequences. All the squads, along with the golems and mercenaries, were moving to the surface, passing through the cold floor. Jink kept the fire burning in his hand. There was also a fire in the mercenaries' cage. Phobos had been sitting in a cage and freezing all this time. The knights met them at the exit. The commander-in-chief approached Jink and asked how they got there. The guy replied that it was good and thanked them for welcoming his squad. The mercenaries are crying with happiness as they were glad that they were able to survive. The commander-in-chief looks at the mercenaries and asks if they are suspected participants outside of custody. Jink looks at the mercenaries and says they told them they were connected to the Nadzar country. He tells us that there was a battle as a result and many died. He thinks there are enough witnesses left. The commander-in-chief smiles and says that they will take care of the prisoners and interrogate them. The man turns to Jink and asks if he wants to tell everything in a day at the guild. The guy agrees. The commander-in-chief said that their squad was tired, so he let them rest. Jink sat on the bed and talked about how they had come a long way and got out of a long battle alive. Nina smiles and says that after the sleeping bag, the bed seemed even softer. Jink looks at the girl with a smile and says that the whole squad is afraid of being out of custody. He assures her that they are now in the best and safest hotel. Jan looks at his partners with one eye and says that the country has repaid them with accommodation. He said they could stay in this place for a month. Jink says he doesn't mind that, considering the stake situation. Esther says they didn't know they were going to be attacked. He mentions the Dan case and the truth serum. Jink interrupts his brother's speech and says that they still have things to do, so he suggests that they go to bed and sleep. Everyone agrees. The next day, Jink meets with Daniel Fonk, who was the Duke of the Kingdom of Kal. He was pleased to meet Jink. The man said he was responsible for their case with out of custody. Jink is nervous at this moment because he has met an important person. He hesitantly replies that he is also glad to meet him. Dan puts a cookie in his mouth and says that the man is friendly. He asked him to leave the formalities. Daniel grins and asks him not to worry. Dink hesitantly agrees with the man. Dan seems too calm and rude to him. Daniel tells me that they are from the same ducal Fonka family. Dan says he's from a poor branch. Dan also talks about being the fifth son of a concubine. He didn't have the money to go to school. When he was little, he just waved his sword on the field. Daniel tells us that as a child he studied management and ran the house of Dan's parents. He was the connecting link. Daniel continues and talks about how Dan has always been like this since birth. He thinks that Dan has always been naughty, but the Fonka family still saw talent in him, so they wanted to make him a vassal. Daniel says that Dan opposed this decision. When the young man turned 12, he went missing. Dan talks about how he became an adventurer in Hamel and then started running his own business. Daniel says he may be fired from the guild at the moment. He asks Dan to give up and return to them. He says he has several positions he can give him. Dan thinks he won't be of any use, so he refuses right away. Daniel looks at Dan and says that he is not going to give up. He was serious about it. Jink looks at the men and thinks that Duke Fonka wants to bring Dan back. He wonders if he will be able to take responsibility in this case. Dan says it's time for them to end the conversation about him. Daniel says that all the evidence has been brought to court. He asks what they would like to do with the participants. Jink believes that they could be eliminated so that there would be no opportunity for revenge. Dan says that after being tortured and interrogated, the participants' property outside of detention was confiscated. The man believes that they will be able to sell all this and give the money to the big tree. The man also says that after they will be formally sentenced in the stake court. Jink asks how Marquis Putneel is doing. He assumes that the man is still trying to find out as much information about them as possible. Daniel smiles and says they don't have to worry because Daniel has already been captured. The man says that the Marquis wanted to take their servants hostage, for which he was taken under arrest. Daniel says that as soon as the Marquis tore off a few nails, he immediately told about all the secrets of Rosault and other aristocrats. The man adds that, unlike out of custody, Putneel didn't know anything worthwhile. He says that his fate will be decided after the punishment. Daniel adjusts his glasses and says that over the years of Nadzar's aggression, the plan to kidnap Dzink and Rosault's espionage activities have had a negative impact on the country. Daniel says that King Kola has decided to attack Nadzar and Rosault. The heroes are amazed. Jink wonders why he decided to attack. Daniel thinks it was done for show. He says Putneel's body was sent to Rosault. Jink says they need to use the largest stake town, Hamel, to win. Jink thinks that since Dan will be removed from his post, they will need to urgently find a new guild head. Daniel approaches Dzink and asks how he feels. He apologizes for delaying the guy, and then he says that he couldn't discuss some topics in the presence of Dan. The guy says that everything is fine. Daniel says that earlier he told Dan to go to Fonk's house. He is sure that it is difficult for a man, but he just does not show it. Daniel thinks that Dan is having a hard time, as he is being kicked out of the guild and loses his qualifications as an adventurer of rank A. Daniel says that if Dan is not given a similar post, then all sorts of bad people may start mocking him. He says that besides Dan, information was stolen from many other influential people. Jink agrees with the man. He says that Dan is a very good fighter, so he doesn't understand why to get rid of him. The hero suddenly says that he has come up with something. Jink smiles and says that he will create his own clan. Danielle asks if this is true. Jink is responsible for creating a clan, and since Dan will be a member of the lower level, he will make it a kind of punishment. Jink says we can ask for an amnesty from His Majesty. He thinks they can apply for a reduced sentence. Daniel smiles and says that in that case he will sign the petition. If their names are mentioned, the effect will be greater. He's about to leave and says he'll tell you the result in a few days. Jink says he will be waiting for his news. A few days later, Dan arrives. He greets everyone and introduces himself as an ordinary adventurer. He looks sullenly at Jinka and says that he would be happy to work for his clan. Jink stops him and demands that he not go too far. Daniel laughs. Daniel says that thanks to the petition, Dan easily admitted his guilt and is released from punishment. He is also now forced to join the clan for 5 years. Daniel adds that the guild also didn't want to let go of a man like Dan. Dan turns his head away and folds his arms over his chest. Then Dan talks about how he quit on his own to mitigate the damage. Jink asks if there should be a new guild head in this case. Two girls approach them. Daniel says that Cammy will become the interim head until a replacement is found. He explains that it's because she's the wife of Alpha, the famous adventurer. Jink says that Dana has already been forgotten. Dan screams and demands that the guy shut up. Dan calms down and thanks them. He says that Dink and Daniel have done so much for him. Jin thinks that Dan looks cute when he's embarrassed. Jink asks if they want to do anything. He asks Dan if it's okay that the clan doesn't have a name. He agrees to help with this. Dan then asks Jink to help bring the maids up to the capital's strength level as they need a leader. Dzink says that if you go to a water place with your things, then everything will work out. Dan asks if he's talking about the place where he got a lot of magic stones and agrees to help with it. The aristocrat selling the house was also associated with out of custody, so he sold it inexpensively. Jink says he's running out of money because he's constantly spending it to help someone. Daniel smiles and says that they have to resolve the issue of out of custody. During the meeting, Dzink was given the floor to testify. Jink stands in the center of the courtroom and tells that on the tropical floor of the maze, while searching, he accidentally overheard them talking about a plan to capture him. The guy starts crying. He's trying to convince everyone of his fear. Dan, watching all this, can barely contain his laughter. Jan and Nina are ashamed of each other. Daniel is at a loss. Esther smiles awkwardly when she says they didn't do anything wrong. The judge says that due to years of attacks on the Call Kingdom, they have made a decision. He lists the cruel punishments of criminals and says that in addition they are sentenced to life in hard labor as slaves. All the observers are shouting that the mercenaries deserve such a fate. The man in the armor begins to speak negatively about the mercenaries and wishes them all the worst for the rest of their lives. Jink notices this man and asks who it is. Dan looks at the man and tells him that the clan master is a messenger. The man looks at Dzink with a smile. Dan says his name is Howard. The hero glares at his interlocutor. Dan tells us that the man's name is Howard, and he is the master of the messenger clan. Jink looks at the man and wonders if his strongest side is really the spear. Jink reflects that their attack range is greater than that of his sword. He realizes that he will lose anyway and admits that the spearman is a formidable opponent for him, just like Esther. But he didn't plan to fight him and decided that he shouldn't worry. Howard looks at Dzink. He chuckles and then raises his hand and shouts to his people to bring him sake. His people start cheering. Then he says that tears outside of confinement will be a snack for him. The man suddenly becomes more formidable and approaches the mercenaries. He asks them if they have thought about their behavior. He says that information was extracted from them. The man puts his hand on the shoulder of one of the mercenaries and apologizes for the way they had to be treated. He says it hurts him to hurt others too. Howard says he will forgive the mercenaries if they pay him twice as much this month. The mercenary agrees and thanks the man. Howard came to court on purpose. He says that he wants to show his strength to others. Dan says that the messenger is in an advantageous position because of him. He claims that this is the clan. No one from this clan has ever complained about him. Another mercenary was dragged into the hall. Dan tiredly says it's his turn. Jink says that the guild head who was fired because of the information leak got off lightly. Dan says it is. He was ashamed to be in the guild, so he had to end his days as the head. Thus, the young man tells the clan head to accept him. Jink hopes that nothing will happen to Dan. Dan turns to the guy and asks what it means. He asks if Dan had any enemies and was loved when he was the head of the guild. Dink claims that this is not a heavy punishment. Jink says that if someone does something undignified, they will be arrested by the guards. Dan says he understands everything. He assumes that the guy is trying to say that everything will be fine. He thanks him. The action takes place a few days later. It was shameful for Dan. He was tied to a stake in front of the guild for all to see. This is often the way to punish those who have lost the trust of the Adventurers Guild. Esther asks her brother if nothing is really going to happen. Jink looks at Dan and says that nothing should happen. Jink was only worried that Howard was somewhere nearby and not in the maze. He also heard that there was a rumor that he was taking in former members out of prison. When Jink checked it, Howard was busy with something. Therefore, Jink gave Dan a ring with an enchantment for wind magic for a while. He understands that the big tree and the harp are involved in this case. It seems to him that something is clearly wrong. Esther attracts her brother's attention. Meanwhile, mercenaries with sacks approach the pillar. They were recently punished by Howard. The guy wondered what they were going to do. The mercenaries took out their weapons from the sacks. Jink and Esther immediately shouted indignantly. The mercenaries started throwing weapons at Dan. Dan looked at the weapon flying at him and used the ring to create an air shield. The weapon stopped inches from Dan's body. The mercenaries shout at the man that he is a coward since he uses magic. They say that Dan must accept his punishment. The guy stops them. Dink reminds that during a light punishment, it is forbidden to throw anything at the perpetrators. Jink says that according to the rules of the guild, Dan can resist such antics. He claims that the mercenaries are breaking the rules in front of everyone. Thus, they, the gentlemen of the messenger, are going against the guild. The mercenary apologizes and turning to Jin, asks if Mr. Jin, the 5th rank, is going overboard. It was reckless of him to threaten them with a mob. The mercenaries say they no longer have anything to do with the messenger. They talk about how Howard fired them. They claim that they are now free adventurers. Jink narrows his eyes. Jink says it's a good thing they're not here under the sign of the messenger. He assures them that if they had caused problems for the messenger clan after being out of custody, trust would have been lost. But it reminds you of the rules and competencies of the organization. The mercenaries start to get angry and move towards Jink, but the guy stops them. Dzink tells us that a few days ago, the participants of the messenger bought up all the broken weapons. He asks if the mercenaries threw these weapons at Dan. They say they took these weapons to sell after leaving the clan. Jink is amazed at the wide variety of weapons now lying on the ground. He says that although he is just learning to master different types of it, he is still not succeeding. Jan suggests Dzink to check in the shops what the participants of the messenger have bought. He says that since it's not them, they don't have to check. In the assessment, their skills and weapons did not match. Dink says that if it was them, they could have been fined. The mercenary leader gives the command to leave. Jink asks them to pick up all the trash. Howard says that Dan has always been right. He thought he could take advantage of the situation. At that time, he grabbed the man by the head and slammed him against the table with all his might. Howard raises the man's head and suggests that the man had other plans. Howard says that the mercenary shamed him in front of Jink. He is annoyed that Fonk will now interfere in their affairs. The mercenaries watching this scene say that not only the enchanter, but also the Duke and the weapon shop will now support him. One of the mercenaries says that if a messenger intervenes in the case, they won't be able to handle the consequences. The second participant asks what they should do now. He gets angry and says he's going to torture Jink. He'll do it while having fun. At this time in the Jinka clan house, Jan approaches the guy and says that there is news. Jink asks what happened. Jan says he's been banned from visiting a gun store in the city. Jink looks at the guy in surprise and asks what it means. Says that Jan went around asking about the messenger, but everyone was scared and demanded that Jan leave. He assumes that they were threatened. Jink thought Howard wasn't very smart, but it turned out he was wrong. He assumes that they intend to block the replenishment of their weapons. He thinks they want to put them in an awkward position without being able to buy supplies. Yang says that weapons and supplies can be purchased through his father's Chamber of Commerce, so there shouldn't be any problems. Jink agrees with the guy. He says there are plenty of big merchants outside of Hamel. He is convinced that even the messenger cannot reach everything. Jink becomes more serious and says that it's still inconvenient to leave things as they are. He wonders if it will be possible to make the messenger unable to move. Ian's eyes snap open as an idea comes to him. He suggests asking Fonk to help them. Jink says that Yang is still a villain. Jan does not agree as he believes that he is not as good as Jink. The maid brings them tea. She asks what kind of black aura appeared in the room. 3 days later, she says that the messengers were the inspirations. There was a crowd of people on the street who were discussing the situation. Everyone was sharing their gossip. People couldn't believe it and said it was a lie. The lady has heard that one of those sentenced to death is a favorite of Lord Hamel. First of all, the friends asked Duke Fonk to spread gossip mixed with the truth. It was originally a notorious clan, and thanks to rumors, Howard is unable to gather people. Jink had already heard Howard's rampage. Jink also dealt with the issue of the gun store, and now it will be run by Duke Fonk's merchant. Jink thinks that in this case, the messengers are unlikely to be able to put pressure on him. The weapons were made by the maids using alchemical magic. The maids were happy as they enjoyed making weapons. This increased the mana reserve. Jink says they're going back to the capital. He mentions that this is also an offer from the Duke, who decided to participate in the ceremony of declaring war on the Kingdom of Rosalt. Dan says that he is a member of the Jinka clan and asks if he should go with him. Jink says that everything is calm at the moment, but there is still a chance that the messengers will come to take revenge. The guy asks Dan to stay in Hamel as a liaison, accompanying the guild leader. Dan and Jink look at the city. Dan breaks the silence and asks if Jink is going to go to war. Dan says that the country will definitely try to appropriate his power. He says that the guy saved him and helped a lot, so he didn't want to say something like that. Dan believes that Jink is still a child, so he doesn't have to force himself to fight. After some time, Jink arrived at the royal capital. He noticed that there were a lot of royal guards on the street. He noticed that everyone was in a military mood. The king greets the guy. He apologizes for calling him right after he arrived. Jink also wanted to learn as much as possible about this war and take part in it. Jink inspects the office and the high-ranking people sitting in it. The king thinks that Jink has already received a reward from the guild, but this one will be from the country. A servant approaches him and hands him a scroll. Gems are given as a reward. Jin is allowed to grant the status of commoners to the servants Nina and Jan. Jink did not expect anything else from Duke Fonk. The guy is happy that the man did what Jink asked him to do. Jink thinks Nina and Yang have suffered enough. He hoped to restore their status as commoners one day. He thinks that when he returns, he will cancel the obeying magic. He thanked the king for the opportunity. Dink wanted to ask for the same thing for Esther and Elsa. But he understood that now was not the right time and conditions for this, because the situation in Rosalta was completely unstable. Then the king begins to talk about the situation in neighboring countries. He says that the kingdom of Rosalt and the kingdom of Nazar, whose alliance has broken up, are starting a war. The country is concentrating its troops in 2 cities bordering the kingdom of Rosalt, including Karda. As soon as war is declared, they will be ready to attack. The man adds that the Quarto border is divided by a river. At this moment, Jink asks if everything is normal in the city with people. Daniel says they have heavily barricaded themselves along the river, and the Rosalt kingdom is busy fighting Nazar, so there won't be a big battle there. The man mentions that the Kal kingdom only accepts adventurers and children who have escaped from Rosalt. Nazar has captured 1/3 of Rosalt's territory, so do not assume that Rosalt has an advantage. Jink asks what the man is talking about. The man continues and explains the weaknesses of the sides. This situation is a lucky break for the stake. He raises his hand, clenches it into a fist, and claims that Rosalt has already been defeated. Nazar's army in Rosalt has been depleted by the plague. The king claims that the army of their country will go there and destroy them both at once. The king says that there is one problem that will need a dink to solve. Danielle talks about how they have prepared a lot of potions and drinking water to fight the plague in Rosalta, but they are running out of magic bags to carry it. That's why Danielle asks the guy to mass-produce magic bags. He says that if the guy agrees, they will buy all the bags at a high price. Dink thinks about it and says that it is quite possible. He asks if they need magic bags for transportation, then why would they carry water, and why not create it using water magic? He claims that even ordinary soldiers have enough mana to create drinking water. The king claims that in war during battles the mana reserve plays a big role. He says that even a small supply of mana can keep a soldier alive and not everyone can create it. He agrees but sets one condition. The king asks again. Jink says that those who really want to use accessories are adventurers and merchants from the Labyrinth City. He knows that this is not a country that has a monopoly on this. The guy says he wants the king to sell half of what he will do to the people. The king agrees and says he will take responsibility and do it. Jink thanks the king. Daniel suggests that we finish discussing the invasion of Rosalt. He decides to discuss Nazar. The man says that the necromancer family Bernhard is in Nazar. Daniel says that Bernhard has been around for quite a long time and has an outstanding history closely linked to the royal Nazar family. They are feared as the trump card of the kingdom. There are about 100 people in the family with necromancy abilities. The family has as many children as possible and brings up those with a talent for necromancy. They currently have 8 peerless necromancers. He believes that they can be defeated by numbers, but the army will not be able to ignore the number of victims. Jink understood that it was problematic to fight necromancers as long as there were dead people. Whether they are rotten or skeletons, they are difficult to manipulate with the same force as they were in life. But they don't use magic. Jink knew that the only way to defeat them was to crush the dead man or deal with the necromancer himself. But in place of one dead man gives another. Because of this, there is a chance that they will fight with a strong corpse again. One of the aristocrats says that if the king and his army are patient for a while, then the salvation will be that the necromancer will exhaust his mana supply. But he believes that it is necessary to take into account the number of stake soldiers defeated by that time. The king asks for Jink's opinion. He says he was avoiding a direct collision. By intimidating enemy soldiers using magic, they can destroy enemy military supplies and food by burning and sudden night attacks. Daniel thinks that a certain amount of wear and tear should thoroughly undermine the morale of Nazar's entire army. The king chuckles thoughtfully, and then he says it's a realistic and good idea. He suggests including Zink's suggestion in their strategy. He also apologizes for wanting Jink to start making accessories immediately. Jink obeys the king. He returns home and starts making accessories. After some time, Jink was able to make more than 1,000 accessories. A maid enters the room and says that Alexander from Tears of the Dragon has arrived. The guy asks why he came to them. Tears of the Dragon has been operating in the royal capital since they arrived here. He asks what he needs. Alex greets Dzink and says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. It seems to him that the guy has become a little taller. Jink also greets Alex and agrees that they haven't seen each other for a long time. He asks what happened. Alex says he has heard that Jink is forming a clan. He came to ask Jink to take them in. He was grateful to the guy for the past. The man then asks what Jink thinks about it. Jink would like to increase the number of participants, so he agrees. People who use Alexa will turn to Zink. He wants to sign a magic contract and says he can cover the costs. The guy therefore agrees to these terms. Jink asks if Alex sees people from the sacred flame. The man says he gets along well with them. The man tells them that they are going to take part in this war against Rosalt. Alex then looks away and says that they are going to explore Hamel's maze. He doesn't care about Rosalt, but even so, he remembered that this is his homeland, so he doesn't want to fight. Jink thinks that the Adventurers Guild is currently recruiting mercenaries. It seems to him that Alex feels bad about it. Jink thinks it's better to enter the maze city later. He claims that they are in the midst of a battle with a large clan called the Messenger. He says that if Alex goes with them, he will be involved. Alex asks if this is true. Jink confirms it. He says Duke Fonk will figure it out soon, so it's better to explore the maze later. The weapons that Jink made in his workshop are delivered to Duke Fonk every day at a cheap price. Now the gun shop is thriving. Dzink suggests sorting out the documents the next day. Alex agrees to this. A few days later at Kal Castle, the king was passing sentence on the mercenaries. He said they were trying to kidnap an enchanter who had settled in their country, and they illegally invaded the Stake's land. He says it's all inexcusable. The king raises his hand and says that, like the invasion of the spies of the kingdom of Nazar by the leadership of out of custody is a crime. Then the man starts executing the mercenaries. In a fit of violent anger and madness, he declares war on Nazar and Rosalt. Thus began the war caused by the existence of Dzink. Kal's army commander was Brando, who took care of him. As he expected, Rosalt's army, occupied by Nazar, surrendered easily. The city of Carda was completely captured by Count Brand. Jink arrived at Brando's mansion. He was greeted by boys from a family of knights. Jink greeted him. The young man asked how Chris was doing. The other two brothers, Roy and Lewis, also greeted Dzink. They were twin brothers from the Hughes family, and they met Jink at school since they studied with him at the Faculty of Magic. Jink asks if they took any damage from the Marquis. The guys convince Jink that everything is fine as they were able to get protection. Jink asks why you're here. Both guys reply that they plan to join the army. Chris asks if Jink wants to hear about his father's army and information about Karth. The guy responds by saying that he really came for exactly that. Chris says that his father confiscated the weapons and property of the residents of Rosalt who remained in the city. Nobles and gardeners will be sentenced to public execution as soon as they are caught. Jink realizes that this is a terrible end for a defeated country. Chris continues and says that ordinary citizens are enslaved to the aristocracy of the stake. They say that the children will go to the status of commoners when they grow up. Zink says that if they subjugate everyone for the rest of their lives, their productivity will drop. After the end of the war, the brothers will travel to Ru, the capital of the kingdom, with the army of the people's aristocracy. After capturing the capital, they plan to destroy the soldiers of Rosalt and Nazar. Then the brothers made plans and decided to go to Nazar. Chris is glad that he will be with his father. He feels at the forefront only when he can make a difference. It's annoying for soldiers fighting on the front lines. Chris asks what Jink wanted to ask. The guy says they have a case to discuss.